Chapter 1340. Yes. Fate followed up Brother Jew's words. 23 has already crossed the line. Woody is well aware of her movements, but because 23 hasn't shown any hostility toward our universe, Woody hasn't taken any action for the time being. She paused for a moment, but according to the current trend, it's only a matter of time before 23 makes the demon gods of this universe feel threatened. Once that happens, she and I, without a doubt, will meet with unavoidable destruction. And you think I have the ability to help you and prevent that from happening? Feng Bujue asked. I don't think you have that ability, Fate replied. Huh. Brother Ju was stunned when he heard this. He then asked, Then why are you looking for me? The sad thing is, Fate continued, I can only ask you for help on this problem. Even if the possibility of you being able to change the inevitable of the future is slim, you're still the most promising one among the countless plans that have an infinitesimally close to zero success rate. Ha! Ha! Feng Bujue laughed dryly and narrowed his eyes. That's really hard on you. You're unhappy, Fate continued. I can understand. Unhappy? Brother Ju repeated the word and laughed. Ha! No. How can you tell that I'm unhappy? I can sense your emotional fluctuations directly through the neural connection, Fate said without hesitation. The next second, Fate continued without hesitation. Also, based on my observation analysis of you, your next response is likely to be to change your attitude when talking to me, seize the initiative of the conversation, and use very impolite and logically aggressive language and behavior to exert pressure on me. She paused for half a second. For example, there's an 83% chance that you'll put on a very annoying expression and say to me, if you're asking for help, you should have the attitude of asking for help. Anyway, show me your chest first and we'll talk later, or something like that. At this moment, Feng Bujue forced his smile back. He wanted to quibble about Fate's words, but he quickly realized that his excuses would most likely be useless and would be used for analysis. Therefore, after a brief mental struggle, Feng Bujue decided to speak less and not do anything that would bring disgrace upon himself. After a few seconds of silence, Fate spoke again. Does it feel terrible to be seen through and revealed what you've seen in advance? Generally speaking, I'm more used to giving others this kind of feeling. Feng Bujue looked at the floor, looking quite aggrieved. Then do you understand why I'm doing this? Fate asked again. When she asked this question, Feng Bujue's expression changed. Some kind of inspiration flashed through his mind like lightning. Are you demonstrating something to me? Yes, Fate replied. Demonstrate it once first so that I can explain it more easily. Then explain it to me. Brother Bujue raised his eyebrows and replied. Using the concept that you humans commonly use. Fate said, what I did just now was to use language to change the future. But that's on the premise that you can accurately foresee the future, Feng Bujue said. No, I can't, Fate said. No human or other creatures can do this, at least not in the existence that I know of. What about the Black Hole Queen? Feng Bujue immediately thought of a possible example. Of course she can't, Fate replied. It's just that some of her actions give the creatures of your dimension the illusion that she can control time and space. As Fate spoke, she raised her hand. In the next second, a sphere made of transparent liquid appeared in her palm out of thin air. For example, this water sphere is the universe where the Black Hole Queen lives. Fate tilted her head slightly and looked at the floating liquid. At this moment, every drop of water that makes up this water sphere is actually constantly moving, but because the overall shape of the water sphere remains the same, you can't perceive the flow of water with the naked eye. This kind of flow, or rather, the change that is undetectable by the senses of us three-dimensional creatures, is like time. Feng Bujue caught on very quickly and immediately added the question. Fate nodded and continued, and the outline of this water sphere represents space. Of course, space is also changing. At this point, she made the volume of the water sphere a little larger. But I don't need to make this example bigger than this room, or so small that you can't see it. Anyway, it's fine as long as you can understand it. Okay. Feng Bujue responded and motioned for fate to continue. And the black hole queen is like. A second later, a strange color suddenly appeared in the water sphere in Fate's hand. Like a drop of oil in this water sphere. As she explained, the drop of oil also moved quickly in the water sphere. She's in this water sphere, but she doesn't dissolve in it. So, she's in space and time, but also not in space and time. Feng Bujue murmured. That's right. Fate said, for her, any point in this water sphere is a place that she can reach at will. At any point, there could be a black hole queen. As she spoke, the drop of oil began to move back and forth quickly in the water sphere. Gradually, the originally transparent sphere became more and more turbid, and the flow of water in the sphere became more and more obvious. But she can't arbitrarily change or interfere with the established facts that happen at any point in space and time, because it may disrupt the order of the entire universe. When she said this, the outline of the sphere had become very unstable, and the water flow in it was particularly intense. 5 or 6 seconds later, there was a splash. Sound of water. The water sphere suddenly dispersed into a puddle of ordinary water and sprinkled vertically on the ground, wetting Fate's hand. Then, Fate put down her hand and continued. Let's talk about the so-called future. According to your theory, Feng Bujue pondered and said, the future, the past, and the present. Aren't there any differences? There is no difference, Fate replied. But I can't use your human language or concepts to convey and explain this theory. She shook her head helplessly. Because you are three-dimensional creatures, your brain structure and perception limit your understanding of time to be based on a linear foundation. Therefore, you use memory as a dividing unit to create the so-called past, present, and future, a typical linear concept. Even if you can come up with a tree-shaped development hypothesis for the future and theories, such as parallel universes, you can't elevate your perception and understanding of time and space to the level of a four-dimensional creature. Using the water sphere just now as an example, it's like you're confined to a thin stream of water that's as thin as a strand of hair. You have to move forward along its trajectory, and you'll never be able to detect or enter the water flow outside this line. In other words, you're now dimensionally reducing your thinking and then talking to me about the concept of the future that you've already denied, Feng Bujue continued. Yes, Fate replied. Fortunately, your ability to understand is excellent. So far, our communication has been quite smooth. She paused for a second and added, by the way, when I said that you humans are three-dimensional creatures, it was actually a broader and less precise description. In my opinion, humans are very special. You can say that you're a three-dimensional creature, but I won't go into the details of that topic with you. After all, your professional knowledge of the brain structure is still too little, and you don't have the ability to delve too deeply into the relevant issues with me. Okay, Feng Bujue had suffered enough frustration today, and he didn't even feel unhappy anymore. You'd better continue talking about how to change the future. I think you've already understood. No matter how Brother Ju changed the topic, Fate continued without delay. The future is actually something like a flowing water. Whether it's a straight line or a tree, it's far from being able to express its complexity and variability. Even I can't accurately predict the future, but my prediction success rate is quite high. And based on this success rate, there's the possibility of interfering and changing the future. Oh, Feng Bujue tilted his head and muttered, that is, tangible things shape the shape, and intangible things guide the momentum. What you're saying now, and the act of saying this sentence in a general way, is a shining point of you humans. It's also one of the most fascinating characteristics of your race. Fate gave this praise expressionlessly, and Brother Ju didn't understand how it felt to be praised at all. After pausing for 2 seconds, Fate continued, even though I'm in a higher dimension than you, could not predict that you would organize such a language. Humans, unwilling to be limited by the cognitive limits of three-dimensional creatures, so in the wrong, clumsy, and absurd exploration, and in the midst of constant mistakes, created many strange derivatives, such as literature, music, art, and so on. These are called the carriers or forms of expression of art. Humans also have emotions that originate from biological instincts, but go beyond instincts and even the boundaries of logic. These things make you an anomaly among creatures of the same dimension. And most importantly, you also have something that even gods and demons are envious of, an almost unlimited right to choose. You can't imagine what it means to the multiverse if an existence with sufficient power has this ability. At this point, Fate suddenly took a few steps forward and stopped just a fist away from Brother Jew. Looking into his eyes, Fate said, "What I'm interested in is your free will. And you, Feng Bujue, as an individual, your ability to interfere with the future is clearly much stronger than most of your kind. This is related to your birth and the ability of truth's falsehood." Poof! In the next second, something unexpected happened. Just like when 23 ambushed Feng Bujue, Fate suddenly reached out and directly pierced Brother Jew's chest with his hand. Again? In a way, this was the second time Brother Jew had been hit. Of course, this again was just a grumble in his heart because he could no longer speak. 23 has erased your character's data and left a set of restriction programs in your body. With this set of restrictions, when you enter any scenario world, you will be automatically rejected by a set of anti-cheating mechanisms during the teleportation process. When Fate said that, a bright white stream of data flowed from her fingertip into Brother Jew's body, and it flowed through his body like glowing blood. I can help you remove that restriction program, but I can't retrieve your character's data. Because the player's abilities are related to the gods and demons bet, this part of the data is all managed by the Dream Company. I suggest, when you return to the real world, you resolve this through the complaint process, or you can go directly to Woody. At this point, Feng Bujue's eyes were filled with white light, and his body started to shake violently. I'm now writing a protection program into your body to prevent you from running into a similar situation in the future, Fate said in a calm tone. The process might be painful, but please bear with it. Actually, it was hard to say the latter half of her sentence because there was nothing Brother Jew could do other than bear with it. Several seconds later, the white light slowly dimmed. At that moment, Fate's expression changed slightly. Remember, Feng Bujue. There was an indescribable emotion in her tone. Me, 23, and the people you care about, all the living beings in Thriller Paradise. Our fates, from this moment onward, are tied to you. This is the only gamble that I, as a non-AI life form, will make. I've given up on probability and calculation and bet everything on your infinite possibilities. I hope I'm right, and I hope that we'll meet again in the future. Hum, hum, hum. It was early in the morning in the cold winter. In Feng Bujue's home, the lights in the room flickered strangely, and there was the sound of electricity. In the living room, on the luxurious gaming hub, all the lights that could be used were glowing strangely like they were overloaded. Ha! When the light reached its limit, there was this sound. Then, the whole room darkened like the power had been tripped. The silence lasted for about a minute. Then, a strong arm used the mechanical parts inside the gaming hub to open the lid. Phew! After the lid was opened, Feng Bujue sat up in the cabin and exhaled a breath of white air. In the darkness, his eyes were still emitting a blazing white light. Chapter 1341. The snow was falling. It was falling like rain. The wind was howling. It was as sharp as a knife. A moment ago, there were still many traces on the ground. There were human footprints, horse hoof prints, and some strange drag marks. But now, under the hazy moonlight, all that was left was a blurry white. Whoosh! Suddenly, a gust of cold northern wind blew. At the same time, a figure appeared on the hillside. He was wearing a cloak and a bamboo hat. There was a small bundle on his shoulder, and a long sword was hanging on his waist. When he came to a high place, he stopped and looked into the distance. When the small and that was on the verge of collapse appeared in his line of sight, he let out a long sigh of relief. In this wilderness among the rocks and pine trees, it was not easy to find this place by memory, intuition, and a little bit of hazy moonlight. It could even be said that it was a miracle. Bang, bang, bang. He quickly stood under the plaque of the Mi Yun Inn and raised his hand to knock on the door 4 times, too long and too short. Then, he stood at the door and waited silently. Not long after, there was the sound of the wooden latch being moved, and then the door was opened. A tall, burly man came out to greet him. When he saw the face of the man outside the door, he respectfully said, "Big brother, please." As he spoke, the burly man had already turned sideways and made way. As for the man who was called Big Brother, he only glanced around the room before stepping through the door. Inside the room, there were several lanterns hanging, and there was an oil lamp on the table, so there was plenty of light. When the Big Brother shook off the snow on his bamboo hat and cloak, the burly man who opened the door had already closed the door and replaced the latch. How did the third brother die? When the burly man turned around, the Big Brother shifted his gaze to the corner of the room and asked. At this time, there was a person lying in the corner, a man. Of course, it could also be said that it was a male corpse. Although his head was not chopped off and there were no obvious wounds on his body, the Big Brother could tell that this person was already dead at a glance. "I killed him," the big man replied almost without hesitation. The third brother that the two of them spoke of was their sworn brother. However, the tone of their conversation was strangely calm. It was as if they were discussing someone completely unrelated to them. "Why?" A breath later, Big Brother asked again. "He wants to touch the goods," the burly man replied. Big Brother's gaze flickered as he looked at the burly man. "What kind of action?" "Naturally, it's the kind of movement that will spoil things," the burly man replied. Big Brother took a deep breath and closed his eyes. A few seconds later, he opened them again. "Where's the goods?" "In that room." The burly man pointed to a door on the other side of the room. "Fourth sister is in charge of keeping watch." The eldest brother thought for a moment and said, "The other people in this inn, the shopkeeper, the waiter, the customer, a total of 6 people." The big man didn't wait for the other party to finish his words and continued. "Now they are all lying in the woodshed. When we leave tomorrow, a fire will be able to destroy the corpses and the evidence." "Okay," Big Brother agreed and turned his head to walk towards the room that the burly man had pointed to just now. He pushed the door open and entered. That fourth sister had already heard the conversation outside, so she stood behind the door to welcome him. Big Brother. When fourth sister saw Big Brother, she respectfully bowed with her hands clasped in front. Big Brother casually waved his hand and walked straight towards the goods on the other side of the room. And that so-called goods was actually a person, a woman. In this world, there was this kind of woman. They seemed to be fated to not appear in front of men. They should be locked in the depths of the palace, hidden in a boudoir, hidden away from the world. It was best for them to only exist in portraits or people's imaginations. But in the end, they still lived in this world. So, when this kind of woman appeared, in the places where they appeared, there would often be fighting and death. Sigh. Big Brother glanced at the woman and then sighed. With regard to third brother's death, he originally had a trace of doubt in his heart. But the moment he saw that woman, that doubt disappeared like smoke into thin air. This Big Brother also knew that his third brother was the more lecherous type of person, but he didn't think that his third brother would act recklessly in this kind of important mission. Until he saw that woman. He only took one look and then looked away, because he knew that one look was enough. Enough to imprint her appearance in a man's heart forever. If he let him look at her for a while longer, or if their eyes met, he might waver. Are you hurt?" Big Brother immediately turned his head and looked at fourth sister and asked. "No, it's just that." Third brother. Fourth sister's tone was a little hesitant. "I know." Big Brother interrupted her. "Don't worry about it. Tomorrow, we will set off as usual." After saying this, he turned and left the room. He didn't want to stay there for even a second longer, because he could feel her gaze, and he didn't want to have any further contact with her, even if it was just a look or a word. Only in this way, he could continue to treat her as a commodity under the premise of knowing what kind of fate she would encounter. He could persevere and complete his mission. The time it took to drink a cup of tea passed. Big Brother and Big Brother. Big Brother is no doubt the second, but I don't really want to call him second brother repeatedly, were already sitting face to face on both sides of a square table. Next to the table was a small charcoal stove, and on top of the stove was a copper kettle that was emitting steam. Your heart is in a mess. Big Brother held a teacup, stared into Big Brother's eyes, and suddenly said, "Is that strange?" Big Brother asked. "It's not strange," Big Brother said. After a while, he added, "Not only third brother, but every man who has seen that face will have their heart in a mess. So, the really strange thing is," Big Brother continued, "your heart. Why is it not in a mess? What do you think?" At this moment, Big Brother's tone of voice and his attitude towards Big Brother suddenly changed. "You are not a eunuch." Big Brother still appeared very calm and said slowly, "No," Big Brother said. "You are also not a natural eunuch, also known as Heavenly Eunuch, Hidden Palace. Mr. Gulong's Lu Xiaojia and Jiang Duanxian belong to this situation." Big Brother said again. "No," Big Brother said. "It is even more impossible for a woman to dress up as a man." Big Brother said again. "Impossible," Big Brother said. "Then there is only one possibility," Big Brother said. "Huh?" Big Brother laughed. His laugh was strange, but also proud. Chapter 1342. It was January, and the weather was still cold. However, Thriller Paradise's server and forum were still bustling with activity. Less than a week after the Christmas treasure hunt ended, the Dream Company released a new mode on New Year's Day, Team Battle. The setting of this mode wasn't too complicated. To put it simply, it was a multiplayer killing game where two people formed a team and played in pairs. However, in this mode, there would be multiple pairs of players, but the exact number, the Dream Company stated that there would be no upper limit. In other words, if there were a minimum number of players, there would only be 2 pairs of players, or 4 players, in a 2v2 duel, but there was also a possibility that there would be 100 players in a scenario, and they would be split into 50 groups to fight. In this mode, where the number of players was unknown, part of the rules that were suitable for traditional killing games could not be used. First, the players would not be able to see the enemy's ID in the game menu. All the players who joined this mode would only be able to see the group status of themselves and their teammates. As for how many enemies there were and where they were, they would have no way of knowing that. Secondly, with the above premise, the victory condition for this mode could no longer be based on the rule of kill all the enemies. Therefore, the victory condition for team battle would be similar to a normal scenario, but there would be a race to the top principle. For example, obtain something, kill a target, or reach a certain location before all the other players. Of course, if all the other players died before one of them reached the victory condition, then the last remaining group or player would naturally be the winner. After saying so much, I'm sure everyone has already guessed that the next story will take place in a team fight scenario. However, before we get to that story, we have to deal with what happened after Feng Bujua joined the Christmas treasure hunt. That morning, after Brother Ju woke up from the gaming hub, the white light in his eyes disappeared, and he could clearly feel the growth of his paradoxical truth ability. He could not help but think that if he went back to the source, he and Fate could be said to be from the same universe. Perhaps Fate knew something that the people in this universe did not, and used some method to help him. Feng Bujua sat there like that, thinking until dawn. When he came back to his senses, he realized that it was already 9 o'clock in the morning. He hurriedly went to the toilet and immediately turned back to try to log into the game. But at this time, the voice in the game cabin prompted him that the character he retrieved was abnormal and could not be logged in. Therefore, Brother Ju immediately contacted Dream Company's customer service. To make a long story short, he received a reply after 1 working day. The content of the email was roughly as follows. It was impossible to completely rewind because your interaction with NPCs and anomalies, as well as the consequences of that, were part of the game's progression. For example, if someone's equipment was destroyed while fighting a monster in a scenario, that kind of loss could not be compensated. However, even the character's attributes had been deleted. That was indeed a strange situation. After discussion among the various departments, the final solution was as follows. First, the level of the character that has been reset will be raised to level 55, and the additional EXP, 1923 12600, will be used as compensation for other abnormal losses. Second, the character's mastery level, skill points, and game coins will be restored to the state they were when they last logged in. Third, the inventory and all the items and equipment on the character, other than other types, will not be restored. Items that cannot be restored include Endless Grenade Box, excellent, tool class, WJQ, 308 Military Shovel, indestructible, excellent, tool class, excellent, weapon class, Star Cooling Cannon, no way, excellent, weapon class, Alchemist King's Taunt, excellent, armor class, Phantom Lady's Touch, excellent, armor class, Smiling Face, excellent, armor class. Name, I_1_B_ a belt, excellent, armor class. Life points recovery potion, medium, *5, life points. Recovery potion, large, *5. Fourth, other than Jeppo and Rankyaku, other skills will not be restored. Fifth, the character storage was not affected. That was the result that Fong Bujue had come up with if the email did not end with the sentence, this player, please bear with us. Brother Ju would most likely have raided the Dream Company's headquarters. However, when Fong Bujue saw that sentence, he instantly understood many things. Looking at the entire email, there was a bureaucratic tone between the lines, and the tone did not sound too polite. Only the last sentence was obviously written by Woody. From the perspective of others, this did not mean anything, but Fong Bujue understood that Woody had used a unique method to convey some information to him. This time, Woody was not the only one who had the final say in this matter. It was not difficult to deduce that. In this gamble, Fong Bujue was a very important and conspicuous character. There were many important people who wanted him dead. This time, when his data was clear by 23, those people must be celebrating. Among those people, there must be someone called Uriel. In short, Woody was under a lot of pressure in this matter. It was not hard to imagine that his opponents in the gamble would use the reason that restoring Fong Bujue's data is unfair to him. Come to think of it, Brother Ju's character could be restored to this extent because Woody had done his best to mediate. Under such circumstances, if Fong Bujue did not give up, he would only push himself and Woody into a worse situation. Brother Ju was a person who knew how to calculate, and he was also a person who liked to reflect on himself. This matter was caused by his own miscalculation. With that in mind, he did not dwell on it anymore. It was only right that he paid the price for his own mistake. Just like that, Fong Bujue, who was back to square one, returned to the game. The first thing he did was to organize the resources that he had. Thankfully, once he logged into the game, he received a clear reward. Obviously, after he died, Ambitionist and Snow had completed the main mission of the scenario. Of course, Brother Ju only received a portion of the EXP. He did not receive the reward for clearing the scenario alive. After that, he asked Hong what happened next. The latter told him that after 23 killed him in Kennan's seconds, Blackbeard very wisely handed over the thing that 23 wanted, and 23 left after he achieved his goal. Hong, who was also a good judge of the situation, he quickly expressed his attitude toward Brother Ju's death to Blackbeard. He was very happy. Then he negotiated another deal with Blackbeard. In the end, after helping Blackbeard investigate the disappearance of his son and Dancing Shadow, Hong Hu and Snow successfully received the original translation of Ramayana as their reward and completed the scenario. By the way, the truth was actually very simple. When Dancing Shadow met up with Blackbeard's son, they were discovered by a few members of the Nine Gods who were still active on the island. Then, they were surrounded by the Phantom Church, and both of them died. Dancing Shadow used his special power to leave a message for Blackbeard before he died, but it was not very clear. This was because he did not know much about the enemy's overall plan, and he did not know that there was a super powerful anomaly behind the scenes. After knowing all that, Fong Bujue felt relieved. The game had to continue. The depression when Blade must break was still fresh in his mind, but from the looks of it, that loss was just the appetizer. Let's take a look at Brother Ju's current character profile. Feng Bujue. Level 55 title. Pioneer of Darkness title ability. Descent of the Ward Demon EXP. 3218056000000. Skill points. 105681. Game coins. 101450000. Mastery. General ability A. Workmanship A. Sleuthing B. Fighting S. Marksmanship B. Medic D. Sorcery A. Summoning A. Inventory 1425. Chuck Norris's autobiography. Deceitful pocket watch. Chuck Norris's razor. Oxygen pipe. Tao Wu. As slow as a forest, as fast as thunder. The sealed's right foot. The sealed's left foot. The sealed's right wrist. The sealed's left wrist. The rat mallet. Just underscore we. The heavenly spirit. Earthly fiend box equipment. Psycho poker. Sorcery weapon. 1920 mean war armor. Void treader. Bell's daily knife storage room. 3/15 poker man. Hero ID card. Puzzle card. Sparrow puzzle card. White. Skill tab. 213 Jeppo. Renkyakan equipped skills. Ice Alchemist Persistence. Not so hasty repair tri-beam Southern Dipper. Flying Dragon Fist Souls. I. 0 time difference calculation. Rewrite. Tier 2. All of a sudden, he felt a lot more refreshed. The few skills that he didn't bring with him in the storage room were lucky enough to escape the calamity. As for the equipment that was perfect tier and above, as well as a few of the more crucial other type items, they were all recovered. This was considered a blessing in disguise. After organizing the items, Feng Bujue naturally took the remaining skill cards and hero ID cards from the storage room. After all, his inventory and skill tab were mostly empty, so it would be a waste if he did not bring them with him. In a way, the loss from this miscalculation made Feng Bujue's game more interesting. Due to the weakening of his power in the following days, he was given many scenarios that would have been relatively easy, but that is not what we are going to talk about this time. This time, the story had to start from the night of New Year's Day, when he and Ruo Yu teamed up for a team battle. Feng Bujue, level 55, like Rain, level 52, please select the game mode that you would like to join. You have selected Team Melee. Please confirm. Confirmed. Generating scenario. Downloading. Please wait a moment. The familiar system announcement flashed one by one, and then it was followed by a very wuxia opening from a rough male voice. The wind and snow cover Middle State. There are no old friends in the martial world. Drink a cup of wine and walk the world with a sword. This prologue was unique to this scenario, and the style of the prologue also revealed the worldview of this scenario. Loading complete. You are currently in a group battle royale. This mode provides a scenario introduction, and there's a chance of triggering hidden side quests and special world building. Reward for clearing the scenario, 10 million EXP. The scenario introduction will be played soon. The game will start immediately after. When he saw the reward for clearing the scenario, Feng Bujue was slightly disappointed because the thing that he did not lack the most was EXP. After the data collapse, the only positive compensation that he had received was EXP. After all, he had received close to 200 million EXP for free. Therefore, what Brother Ju needed now was equipment and skills. Of course, it was not like he had not gained anything in the past few days. Perhaps many people had forgotten that Feng Bujue could actually create skill cards, Baleful Ghost Power Company. But the activation mechanism of that power was very complicated, and it could only be activated at the right time. Other than that, Tianxing Disha Box was an item that could be used to learn skills. However, Brother Ju had not fully grasped the function of this item, and he was still trying to figure it out. Ming, 9th year of Qi Feng, 12th month. The narration soon started to introduce the scenario, and once it opened, it gave the name of a fictional era that did not exist in history. Similar to the 22nd year of Shang Ping in the scenario where Brother Ju met Lin Yin and Eunuch Chao, this was undoubtedly a fictional era in a parallel universe. The emperor worked hard to rule the country, and the people lived in peace. The emperor of the Ming dynasty worked hard to rule the country? When Brother Ju heard the second sentence, he could not help but grumble internally. However, in the martial arts world, there was a reign of terror. It was autumn in the middle of the year. The owner of the Jiang family castle, the Jiang family sword, third Master Jiang, was found dead in his home, including Jiang San himself. All the deceased were killed by the same sword, using the same swordsmanship, in an instant with one move. Jiang San was born in the area near Yunnan. He was the direct disciple of the Diansong faction's leader, Duan Kai. After the incident, Duan Kai, who received the news, personally led his disciples to investigate. After a few months, the matter gradually became clear. It was said that a few days before Jiang San's death, he found a sword manual from a Japanese ronin that was lost overseas. The ronin did not know the true value of the sword manual, and he pawned it at a low price at a pawn shop. After a few rounds, it ended up in the hands of third Master Jiang. Jiang San's martial arts were already top-notch in the martial arts world. Otherwise, he would not have been able to conquer the Jiang family castle. After obtaining the sword manual, Jiang San discovered that the manual was actually written by Pei Min, one of the three masters of the Tang dynasty, the Sage of Sword, the Sage of Poetry, Li Bai, and the Sage of Grass, Zhang Su. Jiang San was overjoyed. He immediately handed over the family business and other matters to his younger brother, and he went into seclusion to practice his swordsmanship. Who would have thought that the news would be leaked? A few days later, the Jiang family castle would be destroyed. A month later, when the details of the case gradually became clear, the tragic death of the Jiang family's 63 members was no longer important. The entire martial arts world's focus was on the sword manual. In the 12th lunar month, there was reliable news that the sword manual would appear in a town 100 miles away from Shanghai Pass on the eve of the Lunar New Year. The narration came to an abrupt end. Immediately after, Feng Bujue and Li Ruoyu gained the ability to move. In the blink of an eye, the two of them were already in the middle of a snowy forest. The sudden drop in temperature could only be described with one word: cold. Even though the sun was high up in the sky and it seemed to be noon, the warmth brought by the sun was limited. The main mission has been triggered. Similar to the killing game, this group battle mode also gave the final goal at the beginning of the game. Obtain the Sword Dance Herbarium before other players and maintain ownership of it for 1 hour. When this mission appeared in the mission panel along with the system voice, there was a note at the bottom: the Sword Dance Herbarium cannot be placed in the inventory. For the details of determining ownership, please click here to view. The word view was a hyperlink. If one focused their attention there, they would be able to see a more detailed explanation. Looks like Feng Bujue only took a few seconds to finish reading all the related information. He immediately told Ruoyu beside him, "The difficulty of this main mission is the possession and not the acquisition. Is it that difficult to prevent the sword manual from being stolen within an hour?" Ruoyu asked. "Huh." Feng Bujue laughed. "Let's talk about this as we walk. If we just stand here, I believe we'll be frozen to death soon." Chapter 1343. Linlu Town, 100 miles away from Shanghai Pass. The town was not big. There was not even a government office. If someone wanted to file a lawsuit, they would have to go to Funing, which was dozens of miles away. However, this town was not as small as Chonglin Town. At least there was more than one inn, and there were many residents, shops, and merchants. A few months ago, no one would have thought that this small border town would become the center of the entire martial arts world. But now, the heads of the big sects and clans, the famous people with special abilities, and even the experts who had lived in seclusion for many years, all of them had gathered here. Their goal was the same, for one thing: the sword dance scrolls. The martial arts world was a strange place. Here, anyone could pursue something that did not belong to them, as long as they had the ability. The so-called morality, righteousness, and justice were often just excuses to facilitate people's actions. To survive in the martial arts world, the most important thing was ability. Righteousness without the support of ability was bullsh*t. It was worse than bullsh*t. Those with ability understood this principle. Therefore, they would only show off their bullsh*t when they needed it. Duan Qi was such a person. Of course, in this incident, he was indeed somewhat reasonable. According to his logic, since his disciples' entire family had been exterminated, it was only natural that he would seek revenge on the culprit. The sword dance scrolls was stolen from Jiang San by the murderer, so it was reasonable for Duan Kai to take it back. As for how it would be distributed after he got it back, since there was no one left in the Jiang family, it was reasonable for him, the master, to take over the sword manual. In conclusion, Duan Kai insisted on this theory. Even though it sounded far-fetched, it was more logical than the idea of whoever got it gets it. Unfortunately, even Duan Kai understood that the martial arts world was not a place for logic. A person who had nothing could gain money, fame, status, and beauty here. People who had everything they wanted could also lose everything here. Was that logical? Even if there was probably only one person in a million who could understand this logic. Therefore, Duan Kai's logic was bullish *T to others. Even if Jiang Xin came back from the dead today, no one would admit that this sword manual was his, let alone Duan Kai. At the end of the day, this had always been a game of whoever gets it gets it. Then, among the people who came to participate in this game, who was the most eye-catching or the most powerful? So far, there were 4 of them. The first person was Duan Kai. Jiang San was famous in the martial arts world for his river-traversing sword, while Duan Kai, the master who taught him martial arts, was not famous for his swordsmanship. From this point, it could be seen that the latter's martial arts knowledge was profound. In fact, the identity of Jiang San's teacher was not important. The titles of Diansong Sect Leader and Cloud Explorer were important because they symbolized strength. In this era, Diansong Sect was one of the most powerful and famous sections. Whether it was the number of disciples, the quality of their disciples, or the business and prestige in the Tao, it could be said to be outstanding. The man who was able to hold the position of sect leader of this sect, his martial arts and shrewdness, was really hard to predict. On the basis of this strength, combined with the reasoning from before, Duan Kai naturally held a place among the 4 people. Now, the second person, Taoist Cotton. Taoists usually use plants as their names, such as stone, plum, bamboo, spring, creek, and so on, to appear elegant and refined. But the name Taoist Cotton was indeed a bit strange. From this name, not only did you not hear much elegance, you could even hear a bit of weakness. However, this Taoist Cotton's martial arts were the complete opposite of his Taoist name. No one knew where Taoist Cotton learned his martial arts, and no one knew which Taoist temple he came from. What people knew was that one day, a Taoist who used a sword suddenly appeared in the Jianghu. He used a jet-black heavy iron sword. This sword was extremely blunt, as if it had not even been sharpened. However, countless experts had died under this blunt sword. Taoist Cotton had never tasted defeat since he started roaming the Jianghu. It was as if whatever he wanted, he could get it. Whatever he wanted to do, he could do it. Then there was the third person, Lung Yuqiu. He should be the most mysterious of the 4. He had no friends, even though many people wanted to be his friends. He also had no enemies, because those who became his enemies would quickly disappear from this world. He spoke very little, as if speaking even one more word would have lost him. His deeds were also very few, because he kept a very low profile. And the most important manifestation of this low profile was that he rarely left any survivors under his command. A truly powerful killer was not the kind of person whose name would make you tremble in fear. Instead, it was the kind of person who clearly owed a debt of blood, but when he stood in front of you, you still knew nothing about him. Lung Yuqiu was this kind of person. Although he eventually became a character whose name shook the Jianghu, the difference between him and the others was that in the entire Jianghu, no one, a living person, had seen his martial arts. People could only look at his sword, which seemed to have never been unsheathed, and imagine how many souls had died under this sword, and the process of how these people had been killed. It was only imagination, because probing could turn you into one of those souls. Then, finally, the last person of the 4, Wang Qiong. This person was not a member of the Jianghu, but a businessman. It was a pity that he did not have a name like Qian Wanwan like many businessmen in literary works. Of course, Wang Xiong was not his real name. As a person who had been begging on the streets for as long as he could remember, the name he was called the most since childhood should be Little Beggar or Stinky Beggar. As for what his parent called him, he would probably have to wait until he met them in the underworld to ask. In short, the name Wang Xiong was given by himself because he hoped that this name would always remind him of the taste of poverty, because he knew that only those who have been poor would truly understand the value of money. A person who was born rich and a person who became rich after spending half of his life in poverty would have a different understanding of money. It was like a person who was born healthy and a person who was born lame and was miraculously cured decades later. Their views on walking were absolutely different. Wang Xiong naturally belonged to the latter. He used to be poorer than anyone else, so poor that he had to steal food from other people's houses and hide in a pigsty to keep warm. But now, he was richer than anyone else, so rich that he did not know how long it would take to spend all his money, so rich that he could buy anything. The difference between Wang Xiong and the other three was that Wang Xiong was probably the safest competitor in this game. There was no need for him to put himself in danger. He could wait until the very end and use the most powerful and unique weapon in his hands, money, to obtain the final victory. In fact, more than half of the people who gathered in Linlu Town were going to risk their lives for Wang Xiong. These people were not very interested in the sword manual. Their thoughts were, what was the purpose of practicing martial arts and mingling in the Jianghu? Wasn't it because they wanted fame and wealth? After selling the sword manual to Wang Xiong, they would get a sum of money that they could never spend in their lifetime. Wasn't it the same as bypassing the complicated and dangerous process and directly reaching their ultimate goal? Therefore, Wang Xiong, who did not belong to the Jianghu, was the one who had the highest chance of winning among the four. It had to be said that this was a kind of irony. It was noon and the sun was shining brightly, but the snow on the ground had not melted. The lobby of Kulai Pavilion was bustling with noise and excitement. Other than the customers who were ordering tea and food, there was a large group of people who were going in and out. No one knew what they were busy with. Normally, such a scene would only appear in the morning. In a border town like this, most of the people who came here were the traveling merchants. When the sun rose, the customers who were in a hurry to get to their destinations would wake up. All kinds of people fought for tea and water and fought to put their horses and mules on their carriages. During that time, the staff and then wished they could use their feet as their hands. It was the most chaotic time of the day. However, since the news that the sword dance of the grass would appear in Linlu Town on New Year's Eve spread, almost every inn in the town was busy from morning to night. The managers of the inn were both happy and worried. They were happy because they were making a lot of money every day, but worried because they were afraid that the customers would cause trouble. On the afternoon of the 29th day of the 12th lunar month, a scream became the first drop of boiling oil in the pot of muddy water. Along with the scream, there was the sound of a wooden window breaking and a person falling to the ground from a high place. Soon, there was a corpse on the street in front of Kulai Pavilion. The pedestrians on the street quickly gathered in a circle and watched from a certain distance. They were all talking at once. Among the guests in the hall, some immediately ran out to take a look. Some sat in their original positions, as steady as Mount Tai, as if nothing had happened outside. There were also some who stood up at the first moment, but after thinking for a moment, they sat down again. The one who fell should be Beard Ma. Not long after, a square-faced man, sitting at a square table facing the door, said, "Yes." An old man sitting next to him added, "The broken window belongs to Beard Ma's room." The square-faced man said, "Beard Ma's martial arts are not weak." "Not weak." The old man said, "Just based on the double death palm, he could be ranked as a first-class master." The square-faced man said, "But he's dead now." The old man nodded. "Looks like he's dead." The square-faced man said, "A person who's good at using palms was sent flying backwards like this and fell to his death through a broken window." "What does that mean?" The old man smiled. "It means that in that room, there's someone who's better at using palms than him." The square-faced man said, "There aren't many people like that." The old man said, "Not many." The square-faced man said, "Dian Song sect leader Duan Ku is also one." The old man agreed. Yes, with sect leader Duan's internal energy, he only needed to use force to break the technique, and he could defeat Beardmaw. The square-faced man said again, Wild Tiger sect leader, tiger-faced Arhut 2G is also one. The old man said Luon fighting Tiger Palm is indeed a notch better than the double-shaped death pressing palm. The square-faced man said again, Beggar sect leader Luo can is also one. The old man said, since sect leader Luo has mastered the long-lost 18 dragon subduing palms, then he's definitely one. At this point, the square-faced man shrugged his shoulders and smiled. Uncle Lu, then, who do you think killed Beardmaw? Uncle Lu replied, Young master is smart. I'm sure you already have an answer in your heart. In my humble opinion, there's no need to say. Huh? The square-faced man laughed again. Uncle Lu, you're joking. My eyesight isn't even half as good as yours. Just based on that hurried glance when Beardmaw fell, I might have made a mistake. Uncle Lu was flattered by this young master, but he didn't show any joy. Even if it was just a glance, young master must have already seen that the killer was deliberately using palms to suppress the enemy, to hide his true identity, right? The young master's smile grew wider. That's a person who uses a sword. Uncle Lu said, yes. The young master said, among the people who use swords, there aren't many who can use palms to kill Beardmaw. Uncle Lu said, there's only one person who fits this criteria and happens to live in this inn. Just when the two of them were talking to this point, at the entrance, a man and a woman bypassed the crowd and walked into the inn. The man looked to be in his early 20s. He had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He was handsome and carried a long sword on his back. The woman beside him was about the same age as him. She was also very beautiful and had a delicate face that made people want to love her tenderly. The experienced people sitting in the lobby of the inn all had sharp eyes. With just one look, they could infer that these two people were either lovers, siblings, or very close fellow disciples. Although the man and woman didn't do anything intimate, from the distance between them, the frequency of their walk, and a tacit understanding between their gestures, it was enough to see that they were very close. Innkeeper, are there any rooms left? The young man walked to the front of the counter in a few steps and asked the innkeeper. The innkeeper reacted quickly. His attention instantly shifted from the dead body outside the door. Almost instinctively, he replied, Dear customer, recently, the inn's rooms have been a little short. I understand. The young man knew what the innkeeper meant. We only need one room. As for the price, you can name it according to the current price. Oh, okay. The innkeeper of Kulai Xian was very greedy and daring. Therefore, even though there was no explanation for the death outside the door, he immediately narrowed his eyes and smiled after hearing the young man's words. He smiled and took out the bookkeeping book. He picked up a brush and started writing. As he wrote, he asked, Young hero, please leave your name. The young man replied in a very calm tone, Huangfu Minkong. Chapter 1344. The snow had covered the path and many other traces, but this did not stop Feng Bujue from exploring the forest. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, he found an inn with his enigmatic route-finding ability. Of course, the inn was already a thing of the past, because at this moment, this house that wasn't very big to begin with had already become a charred ruin. The strong burnt smell that had not yet dissipated was undoubtedly one of the reasons Feng Bujue was able to find this place. This place should have been an inn. Feng Bujue stood on the hill and gave it a cursory glance before coming to this conclusion. How do you know? Ruoyu was not questioning Brother Ju's conclusion, but she needed more details to understand the reasoning process. Look at the foundation, Brother Ju replied. For a lonely house built in the middle of the forest, it seems too big. For a temple, its structure is not right. So it is most likely an inn. For an inn to be built in such a place, would there be guests? Ruoyu asked again. You don't know. Feng Bujue continued. Although this is not an official road, but from the surrounding terrain and the appearance of the forest at this moment, under the snow under our feet, there is actually a road. A small path is also a road. If there is a road, it means that there are people walking on it. And those who are walking on it naturally need a place to rest. but there are not many people walking on this road. Ruo Yu continued. Looking at the size of this inn, it could not have accommodated many people. Feng Bujue smiled and walked down the hillside. Ruo Yu followed his footsteps and followed his train of thought. It seems that the fire has just finished not too long ago, Ruo Yu said as they approached the ruins. Yes, the ashes are still warm. I guess it was the fire from last night or this morning. When Feng Bujue answered, he had already taken out Belle's daily knife. He stepped into the ruins and began to fiddle with the various remains on the ground. Ruo Yu knew what he was doing and was happy to let him handle this task. Thus, the two of them immediately fell into a silence that seemed abrupt to onlookers. However, in their eyes, this silence was a tacit understanding that did not need to be spoken. About 10 minutes later, Feng Bujue walked out of the scorched earth and let out a long sigh. Phew, it's about time. What did you see? Ruo Yu looked at him expectantly. First they killed, then they set the fire. A total of 9 people died. At least 3 of them knew martial arts, and all 9 of them died at the hands of strong martial artists. At this point, Feng Bujue paused for a few seconds before adding, the number of killers is unknown, but this person or this group of people must be the type that is experienced, efficient. Ruo Yu listened and thought for a few seconds before saying, in a wuxia scenario, it doesn't seem that strange to run into a veteran killer. But the crime scene is not far from our teleportation point. This means that there must be something behind this. Feng Bujue said, it could be side quest triggered. Before he could finish his sentence, the system's voice rang in their ears. Take a look. Brother Ju opened his hands and told Ryu. They opened the game menu almost at the same time and saw the new quest in the quest tab. Investigate the murder at Mia Tavern. Perfect, this is your strong suit. Ruo Yu looked at the quest and said in a relaxed tone, even if it is my strong suit, at this stage, the information that I can summarize is only what I said earlier. Feng Bujue looked helpless. Okay, I understand. Ruo Yu said, even with the criminal investigation technology of our era, it is difficult to find evidence from a fire that burned until there is nothing left to burn. Now, it is already not easy for you to find this information. Huh? Feng Bujue heard that and smiled slyly. What kind of wind is blowing today? Not only are you not arguing with me, but you also look so understanding. Are you going to ask me for New Year's money? According to my estimation, the value of the New Year's money and various holiday gifts that I have received since I was a child should be higher than the total amount of all the legal assets that you have handled in your life. Do you really want to continue this topic with me? Ruo Yu retorted without batting an eyelid. That's more like it. The next second, Feng Bujue nodded with satisfaction. Obviously, he did not care about the content of the argument. He just wanted an attitude that made him feel more comfortable. To put it bluntly, this was called playing cheap. But then again, this so-called flirting, most of the time, didn't it start with a man looking for trouble and doing something despicable? For example, in a Japanese stage comedy, it was similar to China's crosstalk, but slightly different. One person had to play dumb in order for the other person to complain. No matter how dumb the person who played dumb acted, he was not really dumb. No matter how mean the person who complained was, he did not mean any harm. This kind of game where one was willing to hit and the other was willing to be hit was an indispensable part of human social behavior. Only friends who can unscrupulously call each other idiots face to face and not take each other seriously can be called true brothers. Only a man and a woman who can get used to each other's shortcomings and still not abandon each other can be called true love. Only a man and a woman who can get used to each other's shortcomings can be called true love. Let's not talk about whether this was sad or funny, but overall, the depth of the relationship between people was precisely reflected in the degree of freedom they felt when playing cheap in front of each other. You would only show your true self in front of the person closest to you, because you knew the other person's tolerance for you. This gave you a sense of security. People would only feel at ease when they had a sense of security. Only then would they be able to speak freely and do whatever they wanted. Everyone would meet a few people in their life. You would never have to worry about losing your composure in front of them. Birds of a feather flock together. If you could not find such a person by your side, then your life will be too lonely and too much of a failure. And Wang Xiong was such a person. He did not lack friends. There were too many people who wanted to be his friend to count. He also did not lack lovers. If he was willing, it would not be difficult for him to become a groom every night. But he still felt lonely, because in this world, he could no longer find anyone who could make him put down his guard completely and trust absolutely. When a person could only feel at ease when he was alone, then no matter how many people surrounded him, he would still be lonely. Manor Lord, there are guests requesting an audience. Outside the door, Cheng Wei's report woke Wang Qiong up from his nap. Ah, Wang Qiong, who was lying on a soft couch, shook his head and yawned as he replied, "Who are they?" Wang Qiong had never been to school when he was young. Although he learned how to read and calculate when he grew up, he could no longer change his way of speaking. Therefore, words like "Who are you?" would never come out of his mouth. Manor Lord, it's a man and a woman. The man calls himself Zhang San. He said he is here to deliver goods, Cheng Wei replied. Cheng Wei was one of the more trustworthy people among the people that Wang Qiong did not trust. He and his younger brother, Cheng Yong, had been Wang Qiong's personal bodyguards for 10 years. Although they were called bodyguards, Cheng Wei was more like a housekeeper. Because Wang Qiong had many experts under him, Cheng Wei rarely had the chance to display his martial arts. Oh, Wang Qiong thought for a few seconds. Ask them to wait for a while. I'll go over now. Yes, Cheng Wei replied. Then, the sound of his footsteps could be heard outside the door. Not long after, Wang Qiong was dressed neatly. He left the room and went to the courtyard outside the door. The owner of this courtyard used to be the richest man in Linlu town. His house was also the largest in the town. But now, he was no longer in this town. This was because on the day Wang Qiong arrived in Linlu town, he bought this house and 3 or 4 other houses around it for himself and his subordinates to live in. His buying method was, I'll give you half a day to pack up your belongings and move them away. If you can't take them away, or if you can't pack them in time, I'll buy them all. After he made his request, he asked the other party to name a price. Then, he would pay according to the price that the other party gave him. This was Wang Qiong's way of doing things. This was how he spent money. The scariest thing was that his ability to make money was better than his ability to spend money. Sorry to keep you waiting. Wang Qiong passed through the courtyard and entered a central room in the front yard. As he walked through the door, he was already greeting the 2 guests. Although Wang Qiong was not particular about etiquette, his guests were still very particular. Greetings, Boss Wang. The male guest immediately stood up and clasped his hands together. He was neither servile nor overbearing as he greeted Wang Qiong. Wang Qiong studied the man from head to toe. He was a slender man with a feminine face. He looked to be in his 30s. Despite the cold weather, he was dressed in a neat green robe. There was a sword hanging from his waist. It was obvious that he was a martial artist. At the same time, the man was also observing Wang Qiong. Boss Wang was neither tall nor short, neither fat nor thin. He looked to be in his early 40s and was not ugly. He was wearing a fur coat, cotton pants, and a fur hat. He did not look like a martial artist at all. No matter how one looked at him, he looked like a shopkeeper. Have we met before? Wang Qiong looked at him with a puzzled expression. The man who called himself Zhang San did not answer the question. Instead, he glanced at Cheng Wei, who was standing at the side, and then threw Wang Qiong a questioning look. Oh, Wang Qiong understood what he meant. It's okay. Let him listen. Go ahead. Wang Qiong did not like to beat around the bush. He would say many things in the simplest and most straightforward way. All right. Zhang San hesitated for a few seconds before replying. Then I'll remind you, Boss Wang. The last time we met, I was still Zhu Cheng. What? Wang Qiong took 2 steps back and glanced at him. You said you were Zhu Cheng? His expression showed that he did not believe him. The Zhu Cheng who is ranked 2nd among the 4 greats of Yiling? Yes. Zhang San gave a definite answer. Oomph. At this moment, Cheng Wei sneered. Ridiculous. If you want to pretend to be someone else, shouldn't you at least ask about their body shape? Zhu Cheng's body is comparable to 2 of yours. Then, is Zhu Cheng's voice like this? Those words were spoken by that Zhang San. However, the voice he used when he said those words was completely different from his voice earlier. Instead, It was exactly the same as Zhu Cheng's voice from back then. You. Seeing this, Cheng Wei was speechless. Wang Qiong reacted faster than him. So, you used to be Zhu Cheng, but now you're Zhang San? Zhang San replied, I was never Zhu Cheng. The real Zhu Cheng was replaced by me long before the four absolutes of Elm Ridge met you. Wang Qiong said, oh, then you've always been Zhang San and only pretended to be Zhu Cheng for a while? Zhang San said, I'm not Zhang San either. Wang Qiong said, then who are you? Zhang San smiled. Who I am is not important. I can be Zhu Cheng or Zhang San. If necessary, I can even be Wang Qiong. I can even be Wang Qiong my whole life. This sentence was dangerous. It was as dangerous as the person who said it. Oh, before he finished speaking, Cheng Wei's gaze and murderous intent were already approaching Zhang San like a blade. Ha! Zhang San laughed. I'm joking. I'm just joking. Don't take it seriously, Warrior Cheng. Whether Zhang San was joking or not, and whether Cheng Wei took it seriously, everyone knew without saying anything. However, this topic did not continue because Wang Qiong had already started talking about something else as if nothing had happened. All right. It doesn't matter who you are. You don't have to tell me what happened between you and the four greats of Yuling. The grudges between you Jianghu people have nothing to do with me. I only care about whether I can make a deal. As for who I do it with, it doesn't matter to me. As he spoke, he shifted his gaze to the woman who had been sitting at the side without saying a word. This woman was wearing thick cotton clothes and a red cloak. She wore a bamboo hat on her head, and under the brim of the hat was a thick black veil that completely covered her face. Being wrapped up like this, there were not many things that could be used to determine her gender. However, there were still some clues. For example, the style of her clothes, the way she walked, and the only part of her body that was not covered was her pair of slender, white, jade-like hands. It was indeed a pair of beautiful hands. They were so beautiful that they were flawless. It even felt fake. The owner of these hands had clearly not done any manual labor, nor had she practiced martial arts. Even if she had, it was definitely not hand martial arts. Wang Qiong had seen many women and many pairs of women's hands. Therefore, at this moment, he did not need to look at the woman's face to know that she was definitely a beautiful woman. A moment later, Wang Qiongfu opened his mouth again. He wanted to say, this is the goods, right? But after some consideration, he changed the second half of his sentence to, the person I'm looking for? Yes. Zhang San's answer was neither fast nor slow. His tone sounded very confident. Is she well? Wang Qiong's next question was somewhat ambiguous. Zhang San knew very well what he was asking. She is very well. A second later, as if afraid that Wang Qiong did not understand, Zhang San added, she is as good as new. Wang Qiong did not reply. Instead, he turned his head and said, Cheng Wei. Here. Cheng Wei answered. Call 2 maids and a midwife. Wang Qiong did not finish his sentence. Zhang San took the opportunity to interrupt. Wait, what is it? Wang Qiong asked. Are we not going to discuss the price before inspecting the goods? Zhang San's eyes flashed with greed. How much do you want? Wang Qiong was really a straightforward person. He bypassed the nonsense of asking a question that he already knew the answer to. He bypassed Zhang San's description of how many difficulties and risks he had faced in this operation. He directly targeted the other party's goal and asked the most important question. Double. Zhang San was also a powerful person. In front of Wang Qiong's question, he did not panic at all. In a low voice, he stated his clearly excessive asking price. Okay. Wang Qiong did not hesitate to continue. Inspect the goods first. If there are no problems with the goods, take the money and leave. After saying this, Wang Qiong turned and left. He did not say anything else. He knew that Cheng Wei would take care of the rest. Wang Qiong's appearance when he turned around was very ordinary. The way he walked was also very ordinary. There was no domineering aura in his movements. However, when he turned around, Zhang San looked at his back with a gaze full of respect. Zhang San respectfully sends Boss Wang off. When he walked out of the room, Zhang San bowed even more deeply than when the other party had arrived. He used a tone full of admiration to say these words. Chapter 1345. Constable Fong was 43 years old with a medium build. He had a very proper square face, but between his eyebrows, there was a faint cold and murderous aura. The moment he walked into the inn, every veteran of the Jianghu who saw him had a consensus in their hearts. This person was not to be trifled with. And they were right. Fong Jin's physical strength, martial arts skills, and experience were all at the peak of his career. He could be considered one of the top figures in the six-fan school. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been sent to such a small border town at such a time. Innkeeper. After Fong Jin stepped into the inn, he looked straight ahead and called out these 3 words in a clear voice. "Greetings, master." The innkeeper of Kulai Pavilion quickly responded and came out from behind the counter. "May I know what orders you have for me, master?" Fong Jin didn't even look at him. "Let me ask you, is the person lying outside a guest of your inn?" The innkeeper had nothing to hide. Incidents like this had happened several times in the past month, and it wasn't the first time he and Fong Jin were having this conversation. It's someone who stayed in my inn." "All right," Fong Jin said. Fong Jin quickly added, "I'll take the corpse with me." As he spoke, he fished out some loose silver taels from his pocket. Clenching the silver taels in his fist, he held it out to the shopkeeper. "This money was found on the corpse. Take a look and see how much you'll need to pay for his lodging and the damage he caused." The shopkeeper quickly raised his voice. "Master, look at what you're saying. How much money can a small thing like this be worth? As for the shop's bill, he has already paid for it." Although the innkeeper was greedy, he wasn't stupid. He knew that he could take some money, but he couldn't touch some, even if he was beaten to death. "Oh, I see," Fong Jin mumbled as he put the money back into his pocket. Throughout the entire process, he had no intention of letting go of the money. "Then, this money, I'll hand it over to the authorities on your behalf." "Yo, master." The shopkeeper hurriedly nodded and bowed. "Who in our town doesn't know that you are upright and honest, the reincarnation of justice? This money is at your disposal. There will be no loss." Hearing this, Fong Jin glanced at the inn's lobby and sneered. Then, he turned around and walked out. All right, disperse. There's nothing to see." As soon as he went out, he shouted a few times to disperse the surrounding crowd. Then he called for the few constables he brought along to roll up the body and move it onto the handcart. Then he left. This wasn't the first time Fong Jin had done something like this, and it probably wouldn't be the last. In this era, the imperial court and the martial arts world had returned to the status quo of well water not interfering with river water. As long as the common folk weren't involved in the martial arts world, the officials wouldn't interfere. After all, there was no point in interfering. It was easier for the authorities to just let the martial arts world take their revenge. Hence, in Linlu Town's current situation, Fong Jin only had to show his face to confirm that the deceased was a martial arts practitioner. Then he could collect the body and leave. If the deceased had family members or fellow disciples who could dispose of the body, Fong Jin wouldn't even have to go through the trouble of collecting the body. However, Fong Jin didn't mind collecting the body a few more times. As for the reason, everyone could see for themselves. These martial arts practitioners had some money on them, and it was just enough that no one would say anything even if you were to embezzle. Of course, Fong Jin was a meticulous person. Even if no one would say anything, he still had to have that conversation with the innkeeper in front of so many people. Regardless of how fake their act was, at least there was nothing wrong with the plot. If anyone wanted to make a fuss about it in the future, they wouldn't be able to find anything to use against them. From this incident, it was clear that Fong Jin was an old comrade with a lot of experience in fighting. After finishing his work, Fong Jin ordered his constables to transport the body back to the nearby yamen as soon as possible. Then, he went to a tea shop at the town's entrance and ordered a bowl of hot tea and a few steamed biscuits. Fong Jin was a constable who was good at making money, but he rarely spent it on food and entertainment. He wasn't particular about what he ate and never drank. He could wear a constable's uniform from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Even when it came to women, he was extremely restrained. This kind of self-discipline and restraint were extremely valuable qualities. Many people couldn't even live a day like this, but Fong Jin could live a year, 10 years, 20 years. Hence, he was able to stay sober most of the time. Hence, he rarely revealed any flaws or weaknesses. Hence, his martial arts and stamina were outstanding among his peers. More importantly, he could use the money that others spend on eating, drinking, and having fun to do something more meaningful. In the officialdom, it was very important to have some money. It was useful for promotion, and it was even more useful for survival in desperate situations. No one knew when the boat you were on would capsize. When that time came, money would be the floating wood that could save lives. Those who did not have anything could only sink into the abyss with the boat. Kai Chem. Just as Fong Jin was about to put the second steamed biscuit into his mouth, the saber at his waist suddenly vibrated in its scabbard. If it were anyone else, they probably wouldn't have noticed such a small movement. Even if they did, they wouldn't have cared. Perhaps the tip of the scabbard brushed against the chair, or perhaps the scabbard was blown by the wind, or perhaps someone passed by and brushed against it. No one would think too much about it. However, the moment Fong Jin's saber vibrated, his entire body tensed up. Who is it? He immediately asked himself this question in his mind as he quietly observed the passers-by around him. It was afternoon, so there weren't many people going in and out of the town. However, this was the only main road in town, so there were quite a lot of people in carriages. Fortunately, Fong Jin quickly found the person he was looking for in the crowd. It was a woman with a saber. She was dressed in white and had a beautiful figure. Her gait was strong and vigorous. She had covered most of her face with a piece of cloth, revealing only the part above the bridge of her nose. However, her eyes and forehead were enough to determine that she was a beauty. How could something like this happen? Fong Jin wasn't in the mood to consider whether the woman's covered face was beautiful or not. All he cared about was the pair of sabers at her waist. Fong Jin knew very well that the vibration of his saber was a reaction similar to resonance. Few people knew that Fong Jin's saber wasn't an ordinary saber. Although it was sheathed in a very ordinary scabbard, it looked no different from the normal sabers used by the Yamen runners. However, Fong Jin knew that the saber hanging at his waist was one of the 4 great godly weapons, the blue bird. The jade hook on the pearl in the hand, the spring regret locks the Chong Tower. The blue bird doesn't transmit the message beyond the clouds. The lilac is sorrowful in the rain. These were the 4 famous phrases in the martial arts world. Among them, the jade hook, Chong Tower, blue bird, and lilac corresponded to the 4 godly weapons. The jade hook was a curved saber in the shape of a wu's hook. It was made of a strange black jade. The last time someone saw, it was in a vault in Wang Qiong's house. The Chong Tower was a long halberd, a hollow halberd. Because it was hollow, it was as light as a bamboo pole. However, when it came into contact with blood, it would absorb it into the body of the halberd. The more blood it absorbed, the redder the color of the Chong Tower would be, and the heavier it would be. It was said that after killing 1,000 people in a row, the power of the Chong Tower would be able to split the mountains and split the sea. However, the Chong Tower was the only one among the 4 godly weapons whose whereabouts were unknown. No one dared to pat their chest and say that they had seen the real Chong Tower. Everyone only knew about it through hearsay. Therefore, there were also rumors that the Chong Tower was a fabricated weapon. It was only fabricated to make up a poem with the other 3. The blue bird was a short saber. It was slightly smaller than the waist sabers used by the Yamen runners. Currently, it was in Fong Jin's hands. Fong Jin had inherited it from his master, Blade Phoenix, Meng Qing. As for the last one, lilac, it was a sword. The current owner of this sword was called Xie Wuhua. This Xie Wuhua was the young master of the famous Xie family in the martial arts world. His ancestor should be familiar to all of you. He was the legendary swordsman Xie San. In the years after the Songlin sword duel, the Xie family had its ups and downs. It was passed down to the previous generation, Confucian swordsman Xie Xiuwen, and it flourished again. Xie Wuhua was Xie Xiuwen's eldest son and eldest grandson. In the previous chapter, the young man who was addressed as young master in the inn's lobby was Xie Wuhua. The Uncle Lu, beside him, was also a famous figure in the martial arts world when he was young. People called him Lu Xilai. However, when Lu Xilai was 40 years old, he suffered a crushing defeat. Not only was he seriously injured, he was also disabled. He originally wanted to retire from the martial arts world. Fortunately, Xie Xiaowen took him in, and he became a steward of the Xie family. Back to the main topic. Let's talk about Fang Jin first. There was a saying, when the blue bird chirps, a divine weapon appears. When Fang Jin's master, Meng Qing, passed the saber to him, she said that the blue bird was a spiritual saber. If there were other divine weapons around, it would react. Therefore, when he felt the vibration of the saber, Fang Jin naturally thought that one of the other 3 divine weapons had appeared nearby. However, he didn't expect that. After he searched around, he found that the only expert who had a strong presence was a person who used dual sabers. Could it be that there's a 5th godly weapon in this world? Fang Jin muttered to himself. Suddenly, his blue bird vibrated again. Chapter 1346. Sir, while Fang Jin was still in a daze, a man's voice rang beside him. Your blade doesn't look ordinary. When Fang Jin turned to the source of the voice, he felt his blood run cold. Up until the moment the voice rang out, he had not sensed that someone was approaching. However, when he turned around, he saw 2 more people sitting at the table in front of him. They were dressed rather plainly and looked to be in their mid-20s, at most in their 30s. The people around them, including the owner of the tea shop, did not notice when they appeared. It was as if they had been sitting there since the beginning. You too. Fang Jin was a powerful character after all. Despite his shock, he managed to keep a straight face. Do we know each other? It was a pointless question. However, there were times when pointless talk was meaningful. It could give you time to think, it could help you test your opponent's reaction, and it could also be used to avoid the previous question. No, we don't. Sashimi looked at Fang Jin with a blank expression and continued. But I think since we're sitting together, we might as well get to know each other. Sure. Fang Jin smirked and said, I'm Fang Jin. He only said his name and did not reveal anything else. He did not even use words like this humble one or this humble one. I'm Sashimi. Sashimi did not give his full game ID. Even if the system corrected the word's incongruity in the NPC's consciousness, he still found it weird. Burp. I'm Meng Jingshan. At this moment, Brother Zen, who had been drinking his own drink at the side, made a sound at the right time and even burped. Fang Jin's gaze swept across the 2's faces again as he thought, Yuhuai. Meng Jingshan? Never heard of you. Fang Jin was not a member of the martial world, but he knew a lot about it. If there was an expert among the younger generation who could approach him without alerting him, he would at least know their name. Then, Brother Meng. Fang Jin thought for a few seconds before asking, I won't beat around the bush. May I ask, why are you looking for me? Just a few small matters. Sashimi continued. First of all, as he spoke, he turned his head and glanced at the woman who was walking further and further away on a main road. If I'm not wrong, Brother Fang has noticed that she's not an ordinary person and wants to test her. He paused. And the 2 of us are here to advise you not to. Oh, Fang Jin raised a brow. Does that mean you know her? Yes, Sashimi said. Who is she? Fang Jin asked. He's here to snatch the sword manual, Sashimi said. There are a lot of people here for the sword manual, Fang Jin replied. A lot, Sashimi said. How is she different? Fang Jin asked. Before Sashimi could respond, Meng Jingshan put on his tipsy expression and asked jokingly, Brother Fang, are there a lot of people in this town who can kill you? Fang Jin wasn't angry at being asked such a question. Instead, he became even calmer. Not much. Meng Jingshan nodded. He took a sip from the bottle of baijiu he brought with him. There are a lot now. You mean she can kill me? By the time Fang Jin asked that question, the woman had already disappeared from the main road. She can. Meng Jingshan chuckled. Not just her, we could do it too. As he said that, he pointed at himself and Sashimi casually. These words might be taken as a joke in the eyes of a modern person, but in the ears of a martial artist, It was undoubtedly a very serious provocation. Oh, Fong Jin was a martial artist too. Hearing this, his blood rushed to his head. He was so close. He almost said, "Why don't we give it a try?" However, Sashimi quickly said, "Brother Fong, please don't be angry. My brother Zin is a drunkard. He doesn't mean to offend you." Hearing this, Fong Jin's expression changed. After about 5 seconds of silence, he scoffed. Forget it. Other people might not be able to tell, but Sashimi, who was good at listening, could clearly see Fong Jin's mental activity just now. In those 5 seconds, Fong Jin thought of something important. Since the two of them could get so close to him without him noticing, and even sit down, it wouldn't be hard for them to kill him. Everything else aside, if the two of them had secretly poisoned Fong Jin's teacup, he would be a dead man by now. With that thought in mind, logic won over impulse. Fong Jin's thoughts, including his reaction when he saw the dual-wielding woman, were all reflected in his heartbeat, breathing, pulse, eyes, and other subtle physical signs. And all of these, without exception, couldn't escape Sashimi's eyes and ears. These two experts from Order were the first group of players to arrive at Linlu Town. The two experienced players were not in a hurry to explore the town. Instead, they stayed near the main road at the entrance of the town, waiting for their prey and quietly observing the situation. They knew very well that the players were their real opponents. They were also the only targets they had to be careful of. As for NPCs with special abilities like Fong Jin, they could make use of them. Looking at the other side of the town, the two of them were in the same boat. In a secluded place, in a deserted alley, two people were standing face to face. One of them had a sword. The other had a sword. He was a famous swordsman in Jianghu, Taoist cotton. On the other hand, he was just Zhang San, a passerby who no one would take a second look at when walking in the crowd. Taoist cotton, we don't know each other. Why did you stop me here? Although that was what he said, Zhang San's tone didn't sound like he was talking to someone he didn't know. Legend has it that Taoist cotton didn't take Zhang San's words seriously. He continued, "In Jianghu, there is a mysterious killer. No one has ever seen his real face or heard his real voice. No one knows how old he is or how good his martial arts are. What is certain is that every time he appears, he turns into a different person. Even the person's closest relatives can't tell the difference." Taoist Cotton paused. "To be honest, I didn't expect to meet the most mysterious and terrifying killer in Jianghu at this time and place." Mirror. "Oh," Mirror sneered. "Then I'm curious. If even the person's closest relatives can't tell the difference, how did you know that I'm Mirror?" "Coincidence," Taoist Cotton replied with 2 words. 2 words were enough. Mirror thought for a moment. "You know Zhang San?" "I do," Taoist Cotton said. "Who are you to him?" Mirror asked. "He's my benefactor," Taoist Cotton said. "A mountain hunter is your benefactor?" Mirror asked doubtfully. "Everyone has bad luck sometimes," Taoist Cotton said. "I see." Mirror didn't need to ask any more details. He changed the topic. "Then how did you know I was fake?" "It's very simple," Taoist Cotton replied. Taoist Cotton replied, "In order to repay Zhang San for saving my life, I once taught him a set of internal energy mantras unique to my sect. But I don't have that kind of inner strength," Mirror said. "You don't," Taoist Cotton said. "And my appearance and voice are the same as Zhang San's," Mirror continued. "Exactly the same," Taoist Cotton said. "Can't I be his twin brother?" Mirror asked. "Even twins can't walk the same way," Taoist Cotton said. "Haven't you ever thought that perhaps Zhang San lost the inner strength you taught him for some reason?" Mirror asked. "I have," Taoist Cotton said. Cotton Taoist said, "But that doesn't explain how Zhang San got involved with Wang Qiong." "Ha! I see." Mirror chuckled. "You've been secretly monitoring Wang Qiong's residence all this time, right?" "That's right." Taoist Cotton admitted it. "So, when I saw someone who looked exactly like Zhang San and didn't have my unique inner strength, I knew that Zhang San was dead, and the person in front of me was you." That's quite a coincidence." Mirror nodded. "I didn't expect that an ordinary hunter would recognize Taoist Cotton. and that he had some kind of inner strength that I couldn't detect. Why Zhang San? Daoist Cotton's expression was very cold when he asked this question. His voice was even colder. Could it be that his identity has some special value? Huh. Mirror chuckled. Nothing special is exactly what makes him valuable. Daoist Cotton continued. Transforming into those special people is very dangerous, and I only do it when the mission requires it. Most of the time, I live as Zhang San, Li Si, or Wang Wu. He continued proudly. You should know the principle of hiding in the forest, right? Therefore, for someone like Zhang San, I will always have a dozen or so of them prepared. Mirror paused for a few seconds, then continued. But from the looks of things, I'll have to be more careful when I take on such identities next time. You won't have it next time. Daoist Cotton's killing intent and sword energy enveloped Mirror as he spoke. Is that so? Mirror was still laughing, and his laughter was very relaxed. In the next second, his voice suddenly changed into Daoist Cotton's voice. Then I'll have to ask Daoist Cotton for your guidance. Chapter 1347. Xie Wuhua had been standing outside the door for a long time. He was not in a hurry. Even if he had to stand here for a day and a night, he would not lose his patience because of this. Fortunately, the person inside the door did not make him wait for that long. After that long time, the sound of light footsteps came from the room, and then the door was opened. The person who opened the door was a man. He was tall, handsome, with cold eyes and an overbearing aura. His snow-white robe and the long sword at his waist were his symbols. His cold temperament and taciturn personality were the only impressions people had of him. You're finally willing to come out to see me? Although the door was open, Xie Wuhua still stood 3 steps away from the threshold, not daring to take the risk. Lung Yuqiu heard this and did not reply. He just silently looked at the young man with a square face in front of him. What? Don't tell me you didn't notice that someone was standing outside your room? Xie Wuhua saw that the other party did not answer, so he probed again. I noticed it. 2 seconds later, Lung Yuqiu finally opened his mouth to speak. His tone was very cold, and his words were accompanied by slight pauses that were slightly out of place. I noticed you as soon as you came. Xie Wuhua laughed. So, while I was standing outside the door, you were in the room hesitating whether to open the door or not. No, Lung Yuqiu replied. Oh, Xie Wuhua did not understand what he meant, so he used an auxiliary word to signal him to continue. I didn't want to open the door, and I didn't want to talk to you, Lung Yuqiu added after a breath. Xie Wuhua laughed again and sneered. Then why did you open the door now? I want to go to the toilet. Lung Yuqiu's reply could be said to be concise and comprehensive. The key point was it could not be questioned. After saying these 5 words, he stepped forward and walked out of the room, closing the door behind him. He calmly walked past Xie Wuhua, completely ignoring the latter, and strode toward the first floor of the inn. When his figure disappeared, Xie Wuhua was still standing. Of course, he wouldn't chase after Lung Yuqiu and argue with her, because in this world, only scoundrels and fools would stop someone who wanted to go to the toilet and have some kind of debate. Xie Wuhua was neither a scoundrel nor a fool. At this moment, young Master Xie only felt that he had been insulted. It was an insult called indifference. Lung Yuqiu's reaction showed that he regarded Xie Wuhua as an insignificant person, which made the latter's waiting meaningless. Xie Wuhua wanted to get angry, but he couldn't, because in the process of thinking about how to explode, he suddenly realized that other than the title of descendant of a prestigious family, there was indeed no other reason for him to not be ignored. Although Xie Wuhua had been roaming the Jianghu for more than half a year, he hadn't been able to leave behind any achievements. How could such a person be valued by Lung Yuqiu? Of course, young Master Xie's mediocrity wasn't caused by his lack of ability. In fact, Xie Wuhua could be said to be well-versed in both literature and martial arts. In terms of literature, even though he wasn't as good as Xiaocai, he was still able to bear the title of educated and reasonable. Just this point alone was enough to make him stand out in the Jianghu, filled with rough men. In terms of martial arts, as the eldest son and eldest grandson of the Xie family, he naturally also received the inheritance of his ancestors. In the entire Jianghu, there was probably no one who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him among his peers. However, having ability didn't necessarily mean that one would have achievements. The Jianghu was a very funny place. Here, the word trouble could almost be equated with opportunity. It was likely to bring you all kinds of losses, such as property, reputation, relatives, friends, life, and so on, which could disappear with the appearance of this word. But it could also bring you the same benefits. In the Jianghu, a person who never had trouble coming to his door and didn't seek trouble for himself was definitely a failure. And Xie Wuhua's awkward situation was that, due to the name of the Xie family, many troublesome people and things would take the initiative to avoid him. And because he always had Uncle Lu, an experienced Jianghu person, by his side, many troublesome people and things that didn't avoid him were also blocked by Uncle Lu. This created the young Master Xie of the Xie family, who had mingled in the Jianghu for more than half a year, but still had no achievements. Young Master. Not long after, Uncle Lu's familiar voice interrupted Xie Wuhua's thoughts. Lu Shilai's loyalty and affection for the Xie family were extremely deep. That year, he was disabled because of the fiasco and was destined to have no descendants. In addition, he didn't have any relatives living in the world. Therefore, he, who had watched the young Master Xie grow up, had long regarded him as his own grandson. This was also why, when Xie Wuhua proposed to his grandfather that he wanted to gain experience in the Jianghu, the old master arranged for Uncle Lu to accompany the young master. "Are you okay?" Uncle Lu saw that the young master didn't reply, so he asked with concern. "Not so good." Xie Wuhua knew that Uncle Lu had been secretly watching him, so he wasn't surprised by the latter's sudden appearance. "You shouldn't be so polite." Uncle Lu also knew that the young master had been wronged, but he would never persuade him in the way of coaxing a child. He would directly point out the key point of the matter. "Yes," Xie Wuhua sighed. "I don't seem to be qualified to be polite to him." "Indeed, you don't," Uncle Lu said. "You should have told me when I decided to come," Xie Wuhua said. "At that time, I'm afraid you might not understand what I meant," Uncle Lu said. "Well," Xie Wuhua pondered for half a second. "You're right. But now that you understand, it's not too late," Uncle Lu said. "Huh?" Xie Wuhua's smile returned. "Yes, it's not too late." When Lung Yuqiu returned to his room, he still looked cold. He stepped in and closed the door behind him. Regarding the matter of his room being opened and the matter of the two people sitting in a room, he acted as if he didn't see it and didn't react or comment at all. At this time, Xie Wuhua and Lu Xilai were sitting in Lung Yuqiu's room and drinking tea. The tea was just delivered by the waiter, and the teapot and teacups were new. These were all specially ordered by Uncle Lu. He didn't want to use the tea set in other people's rooms because it was likely that those things had been poisoned. "We have something to ask you." This time, it was Uncle Lu who spoke first. Lung Yuqiu ignored him and silently returned to the bedside. He sat down and assumed a meditative posture. "You killed Beard Ma, right?" Even if the other party didn't respond, Xie Wuhua still asked the question he wanted to ask. Lung Yuqiu, who was meditating on the bed, simply closed his eyes. "It's no use pretending." Xie Wuhua didn't give up and continued. "Even if you can hide it from everyone in the world, you can't hide it from me." He paused. "From your sitting posture, standing posture, walking posture, and the way you breathe, I can see that you are proficient in at least 2 kinds of palm techniques and a set of leg techniques in addition to swordsmanship. You also have a superior internal strength mental cultivation method. So what?" At this time, Lung Yuqiu finally spoke, but his eyes were still closed, and his tone was understated. Beard Ma's fatal wound, and the only place on his body where he was hit, was half a centimeter below his ribs. Xie Wuhua continued. "In this town, there are no more than 20 people who can see that position is the weak point of the double lethal palm. There are no more than 10 people who can hit there with one palm in actual combat. And you are one of these 10 people. Of course, this alone is not enough to prove that you are the murderer." In the next second, Uncle Lu took the opportunity to continue the conversation. The real reason why we concluded that it was you is we can be sure that the palm print under Beard Ma's ribs was made by the palm of a person who uses a sword. He paused for half a second. Maybe you don't notice it yourself, but the hands of people who practice different weapons and different martial arts will have various slight differences, such as the area between the thumb and the index finger of a swordsman, Lu Shalai. Suddenly, Lung Yuchio interrupted Uncle Lu. This was the first time he used this method to join the conversation with these two people. You don't have to tell me the details of your inference. His tone was still calm, and his eyes were still closed. I have never denied the fact that I killed Beard Ma. Uncle Lu and Xia Wuhua were both stunned when they heard this. They quickly looked at each other, and Xia Wuhua said, "Humph, you seem to be quite calm now. Since that's the case, why did you use your palm instead of your sword when you killed people? Why did you hide it?" "Using my palm instead of my sword was not to hide anything," Lung Yuchio said. "Oh, then why?" Xia Wuhua asked again. "Because he didn't deserve to die under my sword." This was Lung Yuchio's answer. This answer sounded like a quibble, but when this sentence came out of Lung Yuchio's mouth, young Master Xia and Uncle Lu were instantly convinced that he was not lying. So he deserved to die? Uncle Lu didn't ask the other party's specific motive for killing. He knew that that kind of question was out of bounds, so he asked a question that sounded a bit like nonsense. He deserved to die. But Lung Yuchio's sonorous answer made the question itself meaningful. "Why did you do it at this time and place?" Uncle Lu asked again. "Where to do it, when to do it, and—" Lung Yuchio paused here. "Who to kill?" These 5 words were obviously for the 2 people in the room to hear. "It's my freedom. It seems we are meddling in other people's business." Uncle Lu was experienced, and he had already noticed the change in the atmosphere. He quickly found a way out and wanted to pull the young master down with him. "Yes." Lung Yuchio also understood the other party's meaning and replied coldly. "Since this is the case, it's inconvenient for us to say anything more." Uncle Lu stood up and bowed. "We have disturbed Hero Lung and offended you. Please forgive us." As he spoke, he winked at young Master Xia next to him. Xia Wuhua was also very sensible. He immediately stood up and cupped his hands at Lung Yuchio, sorry for the offense. The two were polite on the surface, but in fact, their bodies and nerves were ready to deal with the attack. "We won't disturb your rest." Uncle Lu immediately said, "We will leave now. Don't be in such a hurry to leave." Unexpectedly, at this time, Lung Yuchio took the initiative to speak. "I still have something to say." The words "still have something to say" made Uncle Lu and young Master Xia break out in a cold sweat. "Hero Lung, what else do you want to say?" Uncle Lu asked. "Don't you want to know?" Lung Yuchio continued. "Why Beard Ma deserved to die." Hearing this sentence, Lu Shilai's face turned pale because his instincts told him what Lung Yuchio wanted to do. "No!" Uncle Lu almost roared out these 2 words. "Because he disturbed my sword practice." Lung Yuchio continued to speak indifferently, as if she didn't hear him. At this moment, Lu Shilai suddenly knelt down. His body was trembling, his voice was trembling, and his soul was undoubtedly trembling as well. "Hero Lung, this old man can listen to it alone. Our young master is young and ignorant. He didn't mean to offend you. He still has a great future." "No." This was the second time Lung Yuchio interrupted Uncle Lu, and it was also the last time I wanted to listen to. When he heard the word "no," Uncle Lu fell into despair. When that kind of despair appeared on his face, it was as if he had aged several decades in an instant, from a hale and hearty martial arts senior to an old man with 1 foot in the grave. "Uncle Lu, why are you doing this?" Xia Wuhua still didn't fully understand the situation. Although he had faintly felt something, he was still too young after all. He hadn't experienced the true cruelty of the martial arts world. People always think that if you do something wrong, as long as you discover it in time and admit your mistake, you can still make up for it. You can have a second chance. Lung Yuchio opened her eyes as she spoke. "But I don't like to give people a second chance because I don't want others to think that they can make a mistake in front of me." His tone was cold, and so were his eyes. "I don't know why, but the world has a consensus. As long as you kneel down, beg and repent afterwards, you can make up for your previous rudeness, offense, and injury. Because that's what most people agree on. It becomes reason, and then it may become law. But can things in the world really be logical like this? If the world thinks that the thief doesn't deserve to die, then the victim can only accept it. If the world thinks that the rapist doesn't deserve to die, then the victim can only accept it. If the world thinks that the bully doesn't deserve to die, then the victim can only accept it. But how many of those who make the decisions, the majority, those who talk about morality and benevolence, have ever experienced the feeling of having their important things or hard-earned things stolen? How many of them have personally tasted the feeling of being raped? How many of them know the feeling of being bullied for years and years, but not daring to speak up despite being angry? Humiliation, sadness, despair, grievance, indescribable pressure. Is there really a set of reason in this world that can accurately measure the pain of the victim and give the corresponding punishment? At least in my opinion, there isn't. But I came up with a relatively fair method. It's a very simple method. Let the victim decide how to deal with those who made the mistake. Of course, everyone's judgment is different. Some people want to kill the whole family of someone who bumped into their shoulder on the street. And some people say it doesn't matter if they are slapped in the face. They'll even put the other side of their face up. So, I have to admit, my method is actually not as suitable as reason. It can only be applied to a small number of people. For example, people like me. Before today, Xie Wuhua and Lu Shilai would never have dreamed that Lung Yuqiu would say such a long sentence at one time. No one in Jianghu had heard Lung Yuqiu say so much because those who had heard it were already dead. In fact, Lung Yuqiu was not a taciturn person. He was just a person with an eccentric character. He was extremely introverted, so much so that he would be nervous if he spoke more than a few words in front of others. So, he rarely spoke and almost never made friends. Only under one circumstance would he be able to completely relax, open his mouth, and talk to the person in front of him for a while. And that situation was when he was about to kill the other party. Chapter 1348. When the blade cut across Lu Shilai's throat, there was only one word left in his heart: regret. Only when there was concern would there be regret. What Lu Shilai cared about was not his own life. More than 20 years ago, when he was defeated by practitioner Purple Bamboo, he had already regarded himself as a dead man. When he lost everything, it was the Xie family who reached out to him and let him live like a human again. Therefore, after that, Lu Shilai did not live for himself, but for the Xie family to repay their kindness. Compared to his own life, Lu Shilai cared more about the Xie family's honor and loss. Unfortunately, he still failed to protect Xie Wuhua. Lu Shilai was indeed old. Before the age of 40, omnipotent hands and eyes had never misjudged anyone. The only time he misjudged his opponent's strength was after the age of 40. That oversight had directly ruined his Jianghu career. Today he misjudged again, and this time the mistake was even more serious. Before Lung Yuqiu said, "Where to strike, when to strike, and who to kill are all my freedom," Lu Shilai still thought the situation was under control. But when he said that, Lung Yuqiu's aura changed at that moment. He no longer hid his surging sword intent, nor his killing intent. It was also at this moment that Lu Shilai discovered one thing, a terrible thing. Lung Yuqiu's martial art cultivation was much higher than he had expected, by a lot. For just now, Lung Yuqiu was not meditating on the bed, but practicing his sword. Perhaps some people would find it strange that a person sitting on the bed with his legs crossed and eyes closed was practicing his sword. Generally speaking, it was not. But Lung Yuqiu was obviously not in this general range. When a person's martial arts reached a certain level, his practice method was not limited to the form. For that kind of person, the practice of form was less efficient than the practice of mind. Of course, that kind of person was very rare in the martial arts world. Even the current head of the Xie family, Xie Xiuwen, had not reached this level. However, Lung Yuqiu, a man who looked to be in his 30s, already had such a cultivation. Therefore, Lu Shilai, who understood this, quickly changed his attitude and tried to escape. He thought, with the Xie family's prestige and his humble attitude, the other party wouldn't attack him because of this level of offense. However, Lung Yuchio's next words made Uncle Lu feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Not only did he not allow the two of them to leave, he even told them the reason why he killed Beard Ma. It was because Beard Ma had disturbed his sword practice. To Xie Wuhua's naive young master, these words were just a little strange. But to Lu Shilai's ears, it was simply like the sound of a death knell. Now that things had gotten to this point, Lu Shilai had chosen to kneel. His last words were a declaration that he was willing to give up his life and dignity to save Xie Wuhua's life. However, Lung Yuchio did not even agree to this request. Perhaps Xie Wuhua could be considered lucky. Until his death, he didn't understand what had happened in this room. He didn't have to experience shock, fear, pain, despair, and finally die with regret like Uncle Lu. He just died in surprise. He died quickly and painlessly. The corpse fell to the ground, and the treasured sword returned to its sheath. Lung Yuchio sat back on the bed and took a deep breath. His sword killed people without staining it with blood. But he was a person who was somewhat bloodthirsty. He liked to smell the fresh smell of blood beside the people who had just died. This smell could only be enjoyed by the victors. It could remind Lung Yuchio of the price of defeat. You're still the same. Suddenly, another person's voice sounded in the room. It was a gentle and deep male voice. As long as you can find the slightest reason to convince yourself, you can't wait to kill people. When Lung Yuchio heard this voice, he actually revealed a smile. It wasn't a sneer or a sneer, but a happy smile from the bottom of his heart. "Oh, you came really quickly." Lung Yuchio laughed. While he was talking, another person had already appeared in the room, a masked man dressed in black. The doors and windows of this room were not opened. There were no pillars or cabinets in the room that people could hide in. Even Lung Yuchio didn't know how this person came in. But he had come in, and he had come without a sound. Two unexpected helpers appeared, so the task was completed ahead of time, so I arrived half a day early. The masked man replied. "Helpers?" Lung Yuchio heard this and showed a trace of doubt. "Don't worry, these two people are definitely reliable." The masked man said. "I can actually hear the words definitely reliable from your mouth." Lung Yuchio muttered. "Could it be they are?" "Yes." The masked man knew what he was going to say, so he directly interrupted. "I see." Lung Yuchio nodded. "Then, the plan is still as before." "Of course, but—" the masked man said and looked down at the two corpses on the ground. "You really know how to cause trouble. Do you know who these two people are?" "I know," Lung Yuchio calmly replied. "Aren't they the young master and housekeeper of the Xie family?" He paused. "After tomorrow, the whole martial arts world will be our enemy. Do I have to worry about whether there will be more people with the surname Xie?" "Alas," the masked man sighed. "Well, what you said is true." Before he finished sighing, he stepped forward and picked up the sword beside Xie Wuhua. "Give this lilac sword to me. It may be useful." The masked man picked up the sword and turned to Lung Yuchio. "Well, if he can get rid of the corpses together, that would be even better." The introverted Lung Yuchio seemed very relaxed in front of this man, and he didn't want to kill anyone at the moment. He even talked to him in a joking tone. "Stop dreaming. Think of a way yourself, or you can let them sleep with you." After saying this, the masked man disappeared from the room, just like when he came, silently and without a trace. At the same time, on the first floor of the inn, in the guest room directly below Lung Yuchio's room. This is blood." Blade Runner raised his head to look at the ceiling. Looking at the blood that seeped through the cracks of the wooden boards, he mumbled with a depressed expression. He wanted to eat some of the food in the scenario to replenish his energy, but just as he was about to pick up his chopsticks, the food was drizzled with some free sauce. Looks like something happened upstairs. Not a scaredy cat, who was sitting at the same table, also looked at the ceiling and said, "How about we go up and take a look?" Child Jin thought about it and suggested, "Since we can't eat anymore, let's go up and take a look." Child Jin might be the manager of Jianghu, but in this two-man team, not a scaredy cat was the leader and they had to listen to her orders. Okay, since the leader had given the order, Child Jian did not say anything and stood up to leave. Not a scaredy cat followed him out of the room. The two took a turn and went up the stairs to the second floor. Blade Runner was not Xia Wuhua. He did not care about the courtesy of Jiang Hu. Once he reached Lung Yuchio's door, he started to bang on the door. Is anyone there? Child Jian not only banged on the door, but also called out. After saying that, he felt that it was inappropriate, so he quickly added, Is there anyone alive? Lung Yuchio was also stunned. He thought to himself, what kind of trick is this? The Jianghu people in this town should know that I live in this room, and they wouldn't come knocking on my door like that. But his voice and attitude did not sound like a worker at the inn. Could it be a government official who doesn't know the rules? As he speculated, he walked toward the door. Since he could not sense any internal energy from the person outside the room, Lung Yuchio was quite confident that he was a government official. Even though this kind of person was not much of a threat to him, the method of locking himself in the room would not work on this passerby. Creak. Several seconds later, Lung Yuchio opened the door. A young man and woman appeared before him, and they were dressed like Jianghu characters. Similar to most wuxia scenarios, the system had adjusted the player's appearance in the eyes of the NPCs. Lung Yuchio's bad habit was acting up. After he opened the door, he stared at the two players silently, but not a word came out of his mouth. Child Jian and Not a Scaredy Cat immediately discovered the dead body in the room, and they looked at each other. Theoretically speaking, at this moment, it should be the person inside the room who spoke first, but Lung Yuchio refused to speak. Therefore, the situation fell into a stalemate, and the atmosphere was awkward. You just killed him? After about 10 seconds of silence, flashes of sword could not help but ask Lung Yuchio something that he wanted to talk about. Lung Yuchio was also grumbling internally. These two did not seem to know him, and they did not show much shock or fear toward the discovery of a dead body in the room. Lung Yuchio thought about it for a second and nodded. Oh, Child Jian also nodded. About that, the blood of the dead body leaked downstairs, so we came up to take a look. Oh, Lung Yuchio answered and did not say anything else. What do you mean, oh? Then, Not a Scaredy Cat could not stand it anymore. Our food is dripping with blood, and there is blood on the floor. You just say, oh, and you're done? Lung Yuchio really didn't expect that not only were the other party not afraid, but they would also put on such a tough attitude. He thought to himself, these two are most likely newbies in Jianghu, so they don't know who I am. They also don't know that the dead on the ground are Xia Wuhua and Lu Shilai. With that in mind, he suddenly thought that these two were quite funny. Then, according to what you said, Lung Yuchio said after a breath, what should we do? Of course, pay up. Not a Scaredy Cat said matter-of-factly. Lung Yuchio answered calmly, oh, then how much do you want? That's hard to say. Not a Scaredy Cat said. Logically speaking, the compensation should be enough for us to move to another room. Lung Yuchio nodded. You have a point there. Even though he said that, he stood there without moving. After 5 seconds, he said again, but I want to know, if I don't pay up, what can you do? Lung Yuchio had money. Even if he did not have money, the two bodies lying on the floor had more than enough. Furthermore, Lung Yuchio was not a person who loved money. For someone like him, the motivation that money could generate was close to zero. Therefore, his reaction was not because he was unwilling to pay up. At that moment, Lung Yuchio was only acting out of interest. Of course, he did not plan to kill them. He did not think that there was a need for these two to die. Lung Yuchio merely wanted to teach this pair of newbies a lesson, to tell them that the martial world was not a place where one could be reasoned with. In a way, he wanted to help the two before him. Letting a person understand the injustice of this world and the importance of power was indeed a kind act. Those who had not experienced shamelessness would not understand true nobility. Morality that was not practical was just another kind of stupidity. Originally, that was indeed the case. However, the person that Lung Yuchio encountered was not a newbie who did not know the ways of the world, but a savage traveler from another world. Seeing the other party's arrogant attitude, Blade Runner was annoyed. That was right. He did not know Lung Yuqiu. If he did, he might have chosen to remain calm and triggered a storyline where he would cooperate with Lung Yuqiu. But there was no if. The ability of these two in the martial world to collect information was average, but when it came to direct confrontation, they were definitely not weak. When Blade Runner heard the other party ask that kind of question, he blurted out, "Then I'll teach you how to write compensation." Chapter 1349. Blade Runner's reaction was within Lung Yuqiu's expectations, but his strength was far beyond the opponent's estimation. Lung Yuqiu did not intend to draw his sword against the two people in front of him because he did not think it was necessary. However, the moment Child Jian's hand touched the hilt of the sword, the moment his fighting spirit and sword spirit burst out from his eyes, Lung Yuqiu's expression changed. Lung Yuqiu instinctively took a step back, and when he realized it, his hand was already holding the sword. How is this possible? At that moment, Lung Yuqiu's mind flashed with confusion and shock. But before he could think about it, Blade Runner had already made his move. Ping! The blades of the swords collided rapidly in the air. Anyone who could see this confrontation clearly would be amazed by the strength and speed of both sides. However, the sound of this collision was neither loud nor heavy. The sound was like two glasses gently touching each other, light and gentle. After this collision, Child Jian and Lung Yuqiu's expressions changed abruptly, and they each took a few steps back. So that's how it is. Lung Yuqiu immediately thought to himself, I can't detect his internal energy, not because his internal energy is weak, but because his technique is unique and cannot be detected. Are you kidding me? This guy is so strong? Or is this the average level of the NPCs in this scenario world? Child Jian was also surprised. I haven't asked for your name. Lung Yuqiu rarely took the initiative to ask for someone's name, but this time was obviously an exception. Huang Fu Mingkong. Child Jian reported his real name word for word. His real name did not sound out of place in this wuxiao world. Okay. Lung Yuqiu did not say his name, nor did he ask whether the other party knew him. He just said, okay. Then he sheathed his sword and took out a banknote from his pocket. I'll pay for it. As he said that, he reached out and handed over the banknote. However, Child Jian did not take it. No need, Blade Runner said coldly. We have the money. What he meant was, we're talking about reason in this matter. As long as you're willing to compensate, it's fine. As for the money, it doesn't matter whether you give it or not. But I think it's better to compensate you. Lung Yuqiu didn't withdraw her hand. Just do me a favor. What he meant was, for me, this matter is only over after I give you the money. Otherwise, I will feel like I owe someone something. All right then. Child Jian quickly understood what the NPC meant. At the same time, he also realized that when he decided to draw his sword, he had already missed the opportunity to cooperate with this NPC. Now, he could only accept the money in this matter and accept the fact that the NPC would continue to maintain a neutral relationship with him. Hence, the two players from Pugilistic World took the money and left the second floor. They immediately went to the shopkeeper to change rooms. In the process of negotiating with the innkeeper, they learned who Lung Yuqiu was and what role he played in this incident. But now it was too late for them to lament their poor ability to deal with NPCs. On the other hand, in Wang Xiong's mansion, the aroma of grains, the smell of cotton wool, the smell of straw and firewood, and a trace of burnt smell mixed together and drifted in the room. Wang Xiong sat comfortably on the Kong bed, eating pastries and drinking hot tea. Most people who saw him for the first time would think that he was just an ordinary farmer. They would never think that he was a living god of wealth who could rival a country. Master! Cheng Wei's voice came from outside the door. He stood at the door with his back ramrod straight. Even though no one was looking at him, when he said the two words, Manor Lord, he still maintained a solemn and respectful expression. Come in, Wang Qiong answered casually. When he spoke, the food in his mouth was still not finished. Yes, Cheng Wei answered, and then opened the door curtain to enter the room. What did the midwife say? Wang Qiong knew what Cheng Wei was here to report, so he asked directly. Replying to the Manor Lord, there's no doubt about it. Cheng Wei also gave a straightforward answer. Wang Qiong nodded. After a few seconds of silence, he asked again, Cheng Wei, what do you think? Cheng Wei was stunned. You mean? He really did not know what this question was about. For this woman, I used a lot of money, time, and connections. You know it all. Wang Qiong continued. Aren't you curious at all about why I did it? Cheng Wei lowered his head and answered, Master, as servants, we shouldn't ask things that we shouldn't. Wang Qiong waved his hand and interrupted him. Now it's not you asking me, it's me asking you. He paused for half a second. What do you think? Just say it. This question was not easy to answer. Although Cheng Wei had always been at Wang Qiong's beck and call, he knew very little about this woman's matters. In my humble opinion, after a moment of consideration, Cheng Wei replied, Master, are you planning to marry this girl? Although this conjecture sounded superficial at first, it was actually very reliable. Indeed, Wang Qiong did not lack women, but lovers and wives were two different things. Wang Qiong was over 40 years old and had never officially married. He had also never spent so much effort on a woman. Moreover, he had specially arranged for a midwife to verify the identity of the woman. Based on all these clues, Cheng Wei came to this conclusion. Wang Qiong laughed. That makes sense. He paused. But it's not right. Then, Cheng Wei proposed another hypothesis. Is it to give her to someone else? Wang Qiong smiled and shook his head. You're half right. I'm not smart. Please enlighten me. Cheng Wei stopped guessing. A smart subordinate knew when to stop asking questions, even if it was his master who asked him to. I want her to help me kill someone, Wang Qiong continued. Cheng Wei's eyes flickered. Is her martial arts very good? Not all, Wang Qiong said. In the martial arts world, she's only third-rate. Cheng Wei said, but the money you've spent on her is enough to hire at least 10 first-rate masters to work for you. Wang Qiong said, haha, but the person I want her to kill, even if I hire 20 first-rate masters, they won't be able to return. Cheng Wei was silent. Logically speaking, he should ask, who is it? But he did not ask. He did not dare to ask and did not want to know. But Wang Qiong wanted him to know. Why don't you ask who it is? Cheng Wei said, don't dare. Wang Qiong said, haha, that means you've already guessed a little. Cheng Wei could not deny it. Yes, Wang Qiong said, but I want you to know 100%, not just a little. Cheng Wei said, thank you for your trust. He had no other choice but to accept. Wang Qiong said, the person I want to kill is the current emperor. Even though Cheng Wei had already faintly anticipated that he would hear such an answer, when he heard it, his mind still buzzed. The enormous pressure instantly caused his stomach to churn. May I ask, why, Manor Lord? Wang Qiong said, because he wants to kill me. Cheng Wei nodded. He did not ask how he knew. He knew very well that Wang Qiong would find a way to find out. So, if Wang Qiong said that the emperor wanted to kill him, then the emperor wanted to kill him. Why hasn't he made his move yet? Cheng Wei asked. This was indeed a problem. If the emperor wanted to kill someone, why would he wait? Wang Qiong snorted. He has already made his move. He clenched his right fist and said angrily, and he's one step ahead of me. Cheng Wei heard this, and his expression changed. You mean his assassins have already made their move? Wang Qiong said, not only that, they're already in front of me. Master. Cheng Wei heard this, and his face turned pale. He knelt on the ground. Are you suspecting that Hey, I'm not talking about you. Wang Qiong showed an impatient expression. He turned his head and said, don't panic, stand up and talk. Cheng Wei wiped the cold sweat off his face and stood up again. After calming down a little, he thought for a moment and said, then you're talking about that Zhang San? He is indeed in cahoots with the assassins, but his mission has already been completed. Wang Qiong said as he stuffed another piece of cake in his mouth. Cheng Wei did not understand. Master, who exactly is the assassin? Wang Qiong shrugged. It's that woman. Before he said this, Cheng Wei did not understand. After he said this, Cheng Wei was even more confused. You don't understand, right? Wang Qiong said, I'll tell you, and you'll understand. Cheng Wei clasped his hands together. Please speak, Master. Wang Xiong used tea to wash away the remaining cake in his mouth. He cleared his throat and organized his thoughts. First, let me ask you, do you know of catoptry deflection? I don't know. Cheng Wei shook his head. Although he was once a member of the Jianghu, after following Wang Xiong for so many years, Cheng Wei's relationship with the Jianghu had long since faded. Unless Wang Xiong gave him instructions, he would not purposely try to find out or understand the more secretive information. Those are 4 assassins. After a short pause, Wang Xiong continued. 4 assassins that few people know of but never fail. This was a very high evaluation of him. For an assassin, few people know of was more terrifying than never fail. Legend has it that each of these 4 people has a unique ability that is unparalleled in the world. Wang Xiong said, and these 4 abilities are mirror's disguise, flower's beauty, water's inner strength, and moon's qinggong. Disguise? Cheng Wei reacted quickly. Could it be that Zhang San is, yes, he is mirror? Wang Xiong continued. The woman he sent is flower. He pursed his lips, as if he was savoring the taste of the dessert he had just eaten. After a short silence, he spoke again. And flower is the only one among the 4 who has the chance to kill the emperor. When he heard this, Cheng Wei gradually caught up with Wang Xiong's train of thought. This is the reason why the villa master spared no expense in capturing her? Yes. Wang Xiong nodded. If you want to kill the emperor, you have to find flower. Catoptric deflection. These 4 people are not easy to find, but half a month ago, due to a strange incident, I accidentally discovered flower's whereabouts. He looked up at Cheng Wei. That incident, you should know about it as well. Half a month ago, Cheng Wei muttered. Are you referring to the incident where King Yu hunted a fox and met an immortal? Not many people knew about the incident he mentioned, because it was not a matter of the pugilistic world, nor was it a matter of the court. If one had to categorize it, it would probably be considered a romantic story. The overall plot was not complicated. It was about a rather powerful prince who accidentally met a fairy who was as beautiful as a flower and devastatingly beautiful when he went out to hunt. Then, he invited the beauty back to his mansion and treated her with courtesy, treating her as a distinguished guest, hoping that one day he would be able to move the beauty's heart. Of course, there were many logical problems in this story, but there were 2 main problems. First, even if King Yu was blinded by lust, the people around him should have understood. This woman's appearance was very strange, and her background was unknown. How could he bring her back to his mansion? Second, even if everyone accepted that kind of setting, how difficult would it be for a prince to monopolize a common woman? No matter what, he would not fall into the rhythm of a spare, tired chasing after a goddess, right? In short, the illogical parts were quite prominent, and this also greatly reduced the authenticity of this story. It was just that, in that era, communication was basically done by shouting, word of mouth, and erroneous rumors. In the end, there were many stories that changed beyond recognition. There were also stories that were even more ridiculous than this. Therefore, not many people knew about this story, and there were not many people who questioned it. Until this story reached Wang Xiong's ears. Wang Xiong's information network was spread throughout the pugilistic world, the court, and the common people. Therefore, he could know many things that others would never know in their lifetime, and he could also make many speculations that others would never think of. Even though Wang Xiong wasn't 100% sure, he was at least 50% sure that the fairy who was a guest in Prince Yu's mansion was the flower in catoptry deflection, and Prince Yu was her target. When he deduced to this point, Wang Xiong immediately used his connections and prepared to carry out a mission to kidnap a woman from King Yu's mansion. Wang Xiong knew that once King Yu died, that woman would disappear without a trace. An assassin like her would definitely disappear the moment she completed her mission. Therefore, he had to be fast. He had to find that woman as soon as possible, or else he might miss this rare and only chance. Hence, he found the 4 absolutes of El Mountain. Those 4 people might not be the best candidates, but they were the most suitable choices at that time. However, almost 10 days had passed since the 4 people left, and the person who brought flour to Wang Xiong in the end was not the 4 absolutes of El Mountain, but Jing. I still don't understand. Cheng Wei thought about it for a while before he said, according to what you said, both Jing and Hua are here to kill you. Yes, Wang Qiong said. But you were the one who sent someone to bring Flower back, Cheng Wei said. And isn't her target King Yu? Her target, from the very beginning, has been me. Wang Qiong said with a pause between each word. Hearing this sentence, Cheng Wei's train of thought was disrupted again. He followed the villa master's words and reorganized everything. Finally, after a full 3 minutes, he came to a realization. Then the matter of Feather King's hunting the fox immortal was arranged by the emperor? You finally figured out. Wang Qiong nodded. I said that the emperor wants to kill me, but to kill me, Wang Qiong, it won't be that easy. He knows very well that the moment I sense his killing intent, I will immediately take action and strike first to gain the upper hand. Once he figured this out, he set up this trap. Only the emperor can make a prince act for him. That play was made for me to see, because only I could see that Flower is going to assassinate Feather King from that play. And I have indeed fallen into the trap. Cheng Wei followed Wang Qiong's train of thought and continued, and that mirror should be a kind of safeguard. If there were no accidents, he wouldn't have to take action. But obviously an accident happened. Wang Qiong replied. Legend has it that Flower can charm all the men in the world. As long as they look at her, they will be completely charmed by her. Some of them will even be willing to be killed by her. So, even though she only has third-rate martial arts, she has never failed. He paused. Although I told the 4 unique of Elm Mountain not to let any men check the appearance of the goods and not to look at her during the journey, I think they probably didn't do it. His deduction was very accurate. When they kidnapped the Flower from the prince's mansion, the leader of the 4 unique, Zhou Ting, who was also the big brother, really didn't look at the goods from the beginning to the end. He, who had the highest martial arts among the 4 unique, was in charge of bringing up the rear while the goods were brought away by the other 3. The problem lay with their third brother. He was quite lecherous and often went to brothels. However, this kind of person still thought that he had good self-control. It was as if he, who was like a dog in front of ordinary women, would turn into a state of calmness in front of a real beauty. Things changed just like that. When the third brother saw the Flower's appearance, the second brother, Zhu Cheng, who was disguised by mirror, knew that this person couldn't be left alive. Otherwise, it would be bad. So, before Zhou Ting met up with them, he killed the third brother. Regarding this, the fourth sister didn't have much to say. The third brother did ask for his own death. As for what happened after Zhou Ting rushed to me, Shan Tavern, it was just like what was written before. His third brother's death had piqued his curiosity. The difference between Zhou Ting and his third brother was that the third brother thought he was a person with strong willpower, but Zhou Ting was indeed a person with strong willpower. Unfortunately, after seeing the flowers, Zhou Ting's heart was in a mess. He started to think about his mission. Of course, Wang Qiong wouldn't tell him that he wanted this woman to kill the emperor. He used a simpler reason. He wanted to sleep with this woman. It was simple and persuasive. However, after Zhou Ting saw the woman, this reason and this purpose became an extremely unstable factor. The beauty of the flowers was enough for a man like Zhou Ting to give up a huge reward and give her freedom. His purpose was only to occupy an inch of space in her heart. When this thought became clearer and more resolute, Zhou Ting lost his life. At this point, there was no need for Jing to continue pretending. It was reasonable to kill the third brother, but to kill Zhou Ting, the real Zhu Cheng, didn't have such high martial arts. So, he went all the way and killed the 4 peerless of Yuling. He burned these people and the innocent people in the inn together. Then, he personally delivered the flowers to Wang Qiong. Height's Lord, after Cheng Wei figured out the whole thing, he took the opportunity to flatter Wang Qiong. I admire your great foresight, huh? Wang Qiong laughed. If it was really a great foresight, I would have figured it out when I was talking to Jing. He rested his chin on one hand and grabbed another piece of cake. But in fact, when you told me that she was still a virgin, I just managed to sort out my thoughts. Cheng Wei was confused again. All right, I don't know. What does it have to do with whether the woman is a virgin or not? Wang Xiong said, I know a few things about the catoptric deflection, such as the four of them are biological siblings. When he said this, another question in Cheng Wei's mind, why didn't Jing fall for the flower, was solved. For example, the flower has never let any man have her. Wang Xiong was still talking, or, other than his voice and appearance, Jing can also imitate other people's martial arts, and even his inner strength is exactly the same. He casually gave a few examples and didn't finish talking. Then, he brought the topic back to the original topic. In short, considering King Feather's character, there is nothing more convincing about the identity of the flower. With this reminder, Cheng Wei also came to his senses. That Feather King was famous for his lecherous nature. People called him the Demon King of Flowers and the Demon King of Flowers. Basically, he wouldn't let go of any woman that was slightly beautiful. It was abnormal that the woman who was kidnapped from his residence was still a virgin. Cheng Wei muttered, now, I understand everything. He paused for half a second and continued, since you already know that the other party is here to kill you, it's easy to deal with. I'll arrange a group of strong men. Of course, they'll all be women. Immediately go and get rid of the flower. Wait. Wang Qiong interrupted him. Who said we're going to kill her? Cheng Wei was stunned again. You mean, lock her up first? Wang Xiong picked up the teacup and drank a big mouthful of tea. He rinsed his mouth with the tea and then got down from the Kong bed. No need. I'll go and talk to her first. What? Cheng Wei almost shouted out these two words, but he held it back in the end. Man or master? Cheng Wei said, didn't you just say, when a man sees the appearance of the flower? Wang Xiong laughed. I didn't say that. It's a legend. He put his hands behind his back. That kind of nonsense. I don't believe it. But, Cheng Wei looked worried. The four absolutes of Yuling. Ha. Wang Xiong laughed out loud. They are them, and I am me. I'm certain that the legend is fake, and I'm going to check it out now. Cheng Wei said, what if? Wang Xiong smiled and shook his head. He turned around and walked out of the house as he said, what if it's true? So what if I die because of this legend? Chapter 1350. Night fell quietly. On the wilderness, a group of people on horseback galloped toward the Great Wall. When their figures appeared on the blurry horizon under the moonlight, the group of more than 30 people dismounted and returned their horses to the opposite direction. Then they took out the thick cloth that they had prepared in advance and wrapped it around their feet. Then they slowly waded through the snow-covered wilderness. The gradually darkening night gave them good cover. This group of strong warriors quietly arrived at the foot of the Great Wall. They had come here with a mission. These 37 people were the most outstanding warriors from the Great Jin, Ho Jin in this case. They were ordered by the Khan to enter the Central Plains to carry out a secret mission. This mission might take a long time, so long that it could be calculated with the rest of their lives. This mission was also very dangerous. It was so dangerous that once they were exposed, they would immediately lose their lives. However, they did not care. They had already made up their minds to sacrifice everything for this mission. This was because their success might change the fate of the entire Great Jin dynasty. Of course, in this plan, the Great Ming dynasty naturally played the role of the villain and the victim. Master Ba, I've checked. There's indeed no one on the nearby beacon towers. The middle-aged man who said this was wearing a very common jacket. He was dressed exactly like the people of the Central Plains. The Master Ba, who received his report, was about the same age and dressing. Obviously, these people planned to lurk in the Central Plains for a long time. Before they set off, they had undergone strict training. Not only could they speak very fluent Mandarin, but they could also give a thorough explanation of their background and origins. There were basically no flaws in their explanations. Master Ba muttered and said, Natin, you take the lead. After you confirm that there's no abnormality, give us the signal. Yes. After Natin received the order, he immediately moved. He retreated to a place a few meters away from the Great Wall. Then, he stepped on the ground. At this time, they had already taken off the cloth on their feet and leaped up. Then he used the Great Wall in midair to rub his feet against the wall a few times. Just like that, he climbed all the way up the wall and arrived at the top of the Great Wall rather easily. Not long after, his companions saw him poke his head out and make a follow gesture. Therefore, the remaining 30 or so people also climbed up the city wall under Old Master Ba's lead. For experts like them, jumping up the city wall was a piece of cake. All right, not a single one is missing. When the last person climbed over the battlements, Grandpa Ba, who had been silently counting, spoke in a low voice. In the next second, he was ready to give the order to jump over the wall. Unexpectedly, suddenly, "Everyone, please wait for a moment." A man's voice came from above. Just this sentence alone caused the 37 people present to tremble. Almost at the same time, they reacted vigilantly in the direction of the voice. "Did you forget something?" the man asked again. At the same time, a black object was thrown down from the beacon tower. With the help of the moonlight and their outstanding eyesight, the Golden State Warriors saw that it was a human head before it even landed on the ground. The human head landed and rolled beside Natan's feet. Although the long hair on the head was messy and covered half of the face, Natan could tell at a glance that this was the general he had bribed beforehand. It was this person who had removed the soldiers who were supposed to be standing guard on the beacon tower tonight. "Grandpa Ba, this is..." Natan immediately turned his head and wanted to remind Grandpa Ba. However, Grandpa Ba didn't seem to need his reminder. He only raised his hand and signaled Natan to stop talking. "Who is it?" After a moment, Grandpa Ba raised his head and looked at the beacon tower. He asked this question word by word. He didn't plan to hide anything, because the moment he saw the human head, he already knew that he was going to face a battle. "Huh?" After hearing this question, the person on the beacon tower chuckled. He raised his voice and recited loudly, "The first stage of the Great Wall." After he finished his first sentence, his figure had already appeared at the edge of the beacon tower. Shao Kahn, who was forged by thousands of years of wind and rain. After he finished his second sentence, the cold moonlight shone on the weapon in his hand. It was a long spear. "Millions of brave soldiers are not here today." After he finished his third sentence, the person jumped up with his spear. After flipping half a circle in the air, he jumped down from the beacon tower. Lone spear with courage. Weary Dream returns. After he finished his last 3 words, Weary Dream returns had already raised his spear and stood proudly. Although his poem wasn't very neat, the domineering aura in his words was genuine. The warriors focused their eyes and saw a fair-skinned young man. Compared to most of the men at that time, most of the players were fair-skinned and delicate, wearing a strange black armor. He stood solemnly with his spear. Although the moonlight tonight wasn't very bright, his armor still emitted a clear halo. The spear in his hand also emitted an indescribable chill. "Oomph." When Grandpa Ba saw this person, he first snorted coldly and then praised. "Good." He paused. Lone spear with courage. At this point, he simply raised his voice and shouted to his companions behind him, "Brothers, this kid is a good man. Let's give him a quick death." With his order, the dozens of golden warriors rushed out almost at the same time. The space on the Great Wall was very narrow. It should be very difficult for so many people to attack the same target. However, these golden warriors could do it. Their cooperation was very good. It was so good that there was no need for words. It was flawless. In less than a second, the 36 people spread out neatly. They were divided into the middle, the air, and the 2 wings. They all rushed toward Weary Dream returns. This was no doubt their first time fighting on the Great Wall, but they acted as if they were doing something that they had practiced countless times. Fast. This was the first feeling that Weary Dream Returns had. Even as a player whose physical fitness had long surpassed the limits of a human, he couldn't help but be secretly shocked by the speed of these enemies in front of him. However, the scariest thing wasn't the speed, but the way these people moved. They weren't one person, but they were better than one person. This group of golden warriors was like a whole body made up of 36 bodies. Every part of them was serving the whole body, completely disregarding their own safety and life. Their attacks were like raging waves that pushed forward layer by layer, surging continuously. Even if the person at the front was pierced by the spear, swept by the spear, or even turned into meat paste by the energy, the people behind didn't hesitate at all. They would continue to attack until they achieved their goal. Facing such a team, if one didn't have enough determination or use long-range weapons such as bows and arrows, it would be hard to say who would win even if 10 times the number of people were sent to meet them. And now, Weary Dream was still a lone spear, a true one man holding the pass. In the eyes of the bystanders, this was simply a situation of absolute death. However, Weary Dream, his face was as calm as water as he brandished his spear. In a split second, blood blossomed. Specks of cold light were fatal, and layers of spear shadows were soul-stealing. In a short moment, the 36 elite experts were all killed by him. Not a single one was spared. As for the 37th person, the last person, his eyes were bloodshot as he stared at the scene before him in disbelief. He really couldn't believe that those brothers of his who had been through life and death together, those strong warriors who could fight against 10 people in the tribe, would be killed by a mere Central Plains man in an instant. And they didn't even have the strength to fight back. You are also good men. Weary Dream raised his spear at an angle, the tip of the spear facing down, letting the blood on the spear drip slowly. So I'll also give you a quick death. Master Ba clenched his teeth and stood on the spot, trembling with resentment. Only he could understand his feelings at this moment. Master Ba and his brothers with different surnames had already decided to dedicate everything they had to this mission. Death or failure, they could accept it. But now, they couldn't accept such an ending. Kill me as well. Master Ba didn't think for too long before he made this request. I don't have the face to go back and face the Khan, and I don't want to abandon my brothers and live alone in this world. His request was reasonable. Since the mission was hopeless and resistance was futile, he might as well let Master Ba fulfill his wish. No, it's not time for you to die yet. Unexpectedly, Weary Dream refused. What? Master Ba was surprised and a little agitated. What do you mean? Are you insulting me? Weary Dream shook his head. I won't kill you because before you die, there's still one thing you have to do. Master Ba snorted coldly. Humph. Do you think I'll betray wrong? Tired Dream didn't wait for him to voice out his wrong conjecture, and directly interrupted. I just want you to go back to your Khan's side, and tell him everything that happened here tonight in full detail. You. Master Ba's expression was bewildered. After thinking for a while, he sneered. I understand. You think the Khan will be scared and give up after hearing what happened tonight. He can think whatever he wants. Weary Dream didn't let him finish. If he's really scared, it means the tolerance of the person you respect is only SOS. How dare you? Master Ba's Chinese was very good, and various idioms came out of his mouth. The winner takes all. You can insult me, but you can't insult the leader of Dajin. He paused and then scoffed. Humph. Do you think after killing all of us, Dajin will have no one left? Let me tell you, warriors who are 10 times, 100 times stronger than us are as common as carps crossing the river around the Khan. Oh, is that so? Facing this statement that even Master Ba himself did not believe, Weary Dream's reaction was rather calm. I'm afraid we don't have as many experts as you do. He continued in a calm tone. Those who are about as strong as me, and those who are slightly weaker than me, there are only about 100 of them. He was not being picky. In the whole of Thriller Paradise, there were at least 100 players who were close to his level. There was no upper limit to the number of players in this scenario, so who knew how many there were? Furthermore, he did not take into account the NPC forces in this scenario. As for those who are stronger than me, Weary Dream paused for 2 seconds and then added, about 10, perhaps more. After all, I don't have the chance to fight so many monsters one by one. When he finished, Master Ba's view of the world had already collapsed. Fear and shock shattered his understanding. He wanted to tell himself that what he heard was not true, but unfortunately, Weary Dream was a terrible liar. Whether he was telling the truth or not, someone like Master Ba would definitely be able to discern it. You seem to get it, Weary Dream said. As Tired Dream spoke, he casually swung the spearhead and handsomely carried the long spear on his shoulder. If I were you, I think it's still necessary to bring this news back and let my master know. That's all I have to say. He was not as eloquent as Fong Bujua. He was just a stubborn, strong-willed person who knew his place. But today, his appearance there was probably more suitable than anyone else's. The clouds parted, the moon was bright, and the night was not over. Master Ba had already returned. He had a way to come. So naturally, he had a way to return. On the city wall, Weary Dream put his weapon back into his inventory and let out a long sigh. The spear was not his only weapon. Now he had a halberd, a spear, and a staff, 3 types of weapons. But tonight, at this place, he wanted to use the spear. So he used it. Wow, that's impressive. At that moment, another person's voice came from behind Weary Dream. Not only did you complete the side quest, stopping Ho Jin's elite warriors from infiltrating the pass, you even completed the hidden quest, changing the history of this world's future emperor. The person who spoke was none other than Teacher Chi from the Trash Alliance team during S2. I thought we would have to rush to the capital and kill the emperor of this world, Teacher Chi said as he flipped over the city wall. I didn't expect that we would be able to complete the mission just by leaving a little something behind. Assassinating the emperor is indeed a feasible plan. Weary Dream, who had completed the quest, let out a sigh of relief and laughed. I only let him go because I wanted to give it a try. I didn't expect it to succeed. He shrugged. Now that I think about it, the 2 quests being refreshed at the same time is actually a rather obvious hint. Teacher Chi nodded. Now, we should be entering the town, right? Weary Dream thought for a while. I think we can wait a little longer. Teacher Chi said. We've cleared a few side quests today. Why aren't we going in? Don't worry. Weary Dream replied confidently. There must be more than one group of players who haven't entered the town yet. It's impossible that we're the only ones who noticed the 2 from Order keeping watch at the town entrance. He said thoughtfully, don't be fooled by the synopsis. The main quest doesn't say that we have to enter Lin Lu Town. Think about it from another perspective. Since we already know the time and location of Sword Dance of the Grass, it's actually an advantage to be further away from the core of the incident before it appears. Chapter 1351. The winter night was very long. It was long enough to accomplish many things. For example, murder. That night, Lin Lu Town was the perfect place for murder. This was because no one could tell for sure what had happened to the people who were killed there. They might have been killed by their enemies, or they might have been killed by other people who wanted to steal the Sword Dance of the Grass record, or they might have wanted to kill someone else, but in the end, they were dead. Even if there were witnesses, it was useless. In such an environment, who could guarantee that the witnesses were telling the truth? They had every reason to lie for their own purpose. Since they could kill with a borrowed knife, why wouldn't they do it? Therefore, on that night, there was relative freedom to kill. The murderous intent that was normally suppressed was stirring in people's hearts. Those who were proficient in hidden weapons and night-traveling martial arts. Those who had accumulated grievances for a long time but did not dare to take revenge due to the other party's power. Those who schemed to replace their fellow disciples. For these people, tonight's opportunity was absolutely not to be missed. For the players in this scenario, this kind of chaos provided them with the advantage of defeating the stronger and reducing the number of enemies. After waiting for a whole day, we only have the whereabouts of 3 people. I feel like we have made a mistake. Under the moon, Sashimi stood on the roof of a building and looked down at the small town before him. Do you think they could have entered the town without your detection? Meng Jingchan stood beside him. He looked as lazy as ever, and he was holding a beer bottle in his left hand. The sound shells that are scattered around the town are working normally. My detection has no blind spots, Sashimi replied confidently. It doesn't matter if they came in from the mountains behind the town, jumped in from the sky, or crawled in from underground. As long as they are in the vicinity of Linlu Town, I will definitely know. Meng Jingchan chuckled. Then there are 2 possibilities. 1, Our opponents are only Child Jian, not a scaredy cat, and Su Huaishang. 2. There are an unknown number of enemy players. Before we can detect them, they detected us and chose not to enter the town. I would rather believe the latter, Sashimi said. At least, Su Huaishang should have one teammate outside the town, right? About that, Meng Jingshan took a sip of the beer. I don't think so. Not sure, Sashimi asked. Hey, don't tell me you still haven't understood the rules of this team battle mode. You need to form a team of two. I know. Zen Dream interrupted him and added, what I mean is, there's an 80% chance that our teammates have already left the scenario. Huh? Sashimi was confused. Why? Do you have any basis for your speculation? Well, Meng Jingchan thought about it. I suppose there is no harm in telling you. He pursed his lips and continued. Based on what I know, Su Huaishang's contract with Red Sakura is about to expire, and on the issue of contract renewal, the two parties have not come to an agreement. He paused before explaining further. Since Su Huaishang's contract explicitly states that she owns the game account, this means that if she leaves Red Sakura, this game character that Red Sakura has cultivated will follow her. Even though the contract forbids her from joining other gaming studios for the next few months, she can still participate in various competitions as a professional player. Therefore, at this stage, Red Sakura has stopped providing her with various resources, and at the same time, they have used the clause in the contract to forbid her from forming a team with other players. However, the rights and responsibilities of the contract are relative. Naturally, she has her own rights, and Red Sakura cannot make things too difficult for her. For example, using the clause to forbid her from participating in certain scenarios, that is not allowed. Oh, Sashimi was an experienced professional gamer, so he had seen things like this before. When he heard this, he understood the gist of the situation. So, they found a random account to play with her, and, after entering the scenario, they logged out immediately and left her to play on her own. That way, it wouldn't be considered as forbidding her from playing normally. Meng Jingchan nodded. When I saw her enter the town alone today, I was immediately reminded of this. From the looks of it, the termination of her contract with Red Sakura is basically set in stone. Wait a minute, Sashimi said. Then, where did you hear about this termination? I am familiar with the management. Brother Zen replied in a matter-of-fact tone. Recently, they have been planning to sign Su Huaishang. They have even offered to pay her salary while she is still under the influence of the non-compete agreement. Of course, that's all I know. I don't know how much they have offered her, but I'm sure it's much, much higher than when the few of us came here. Brother Zen said matter-of-factly. That's all I know. Look at how unbalanced you are. Sashimi narrowed his eyes and mocked expressionlessly. Why don't you just say that 8 is a lot? I'm not unbalanced. I'm just stating the facts. There's indeed a lot, Meng Jingchan replied. But, to be fair, I do think she is worth that price. From the perspective of the fan economy, I can understand why Su Huaishang's net worth is 8 to 10 times higher than ours. Thank you for the compliment. The next second, a woman's voice suddenly appeared and replied to Brother Zen. At that moment, Meng Jingchan's pupils constricted. Every pore on his body felt like it was soaked in ice. He turned his head slightly to look at Sashimi. He was just in time to see Sashimi's head slide down from his neck. When the clean cut entered Brother Zen's eyes, Sashimi started to disintegrate into white light. Even at that moment, the body was still standing and had not fallen. The cut was too fast. It was so fast that Sashimi did not even realize that he had been cut before he was pronounced dead. Phew! 2 seconds later, Brother Zen slowly turned around and sighed. I was too careless. When Meng Jingchan was on mission alone, he was rarely careless. His carelessness, this time, came from his trust in his teammates. Even so, it was not really a mistake because his teammate was Sashimi. He was the player with the best detection ability in Thriller Paradise. There was no one else. However, most of the time, the strongest spot was where the breakthrough was. From the conversation earlier, it was not hard to see that Sashimi had absolute confidence in his ability. When he said that his detection was flawless, he was not lying. However, once someone found a blind spot in this kind of detection, it would be fatal to the caster. That was not careless. I spent a whole day before I could get used to the detection frequency of the sound shells. When Su Huaishang said that her body had already appeared on the roof behind Meng Jingshan, at that moment, she was no longer hiding her face like she did in the morning. Under the moonlight, her slender body was like a flawless blade. Her bright eyes were filled with chilling, murderous intent. Understood. Meng Jingshan looked at her and said, use energy to cover the surface of your body to form a layer of dynamic armor, and then make this energy layer vibrate the same frequency as the sound shells. That way, you will be able to become invisible in Sashimi's detection net. You are indeed Meng Jingshan. You only needed to hear one sentence from me, and you were able to predict my method, Su Huaishang replied. Huh? Brother Zin chuckled as he took out a pack of cigarettes from his chest. He pulled one out and lit it for himself. Fufu. He blew out a puff of smoke and said casually, you have overestimated me. I am not the kind of genius who can see through all kinds of complicated tricks with a quick glance. And I do not have a mind like Feng Bujue that can think of 100 things in a second. He paused. The reason I was able to figure out your method so easily is because, before today, I have already considered how to avoid the detection of sashimi. So, you have already thought of this method? Su Huaishang asked. Of course. Meng Jingshan flicked the ash off the cigarette and replied, I might look like this now, but I am actually a very competitive person. Even if we are teammates from the same studio, I will still study how to defeat them. He paused for half a second before continuing. Of course, for many things, just because you can think of it, it does not mean that you can do it. Like I said, I'm not a genius. If you want an analogy, a genius can give 12 answers to 10 questions, but I can only give one. So you think, I'm a genius? Su Huaishang asked again. Of course you are. Meng Jingshan shrugged. You, Phantom Dawn, Shiva, Wang Tanji, Passing Rain, Swordless Swordsman, 7 Kills, Uncle Worthless, Oda, AI. I guess that is the few of you. As he spoke, he counted out 9 people. In terms of combat, the 9 of you are the most outstanding people I've ever seen. However, having the most talent doesn't mean that you're the strongest. You seem to have forgotten to include Feng Bujue. That was Su Huaishang's first reaction after she heard that. Him. Meng Jingshan shrugged. I'm unable to evaluate someone who is beyond my ability to judge. In other words, you have quite a good understanding of my ability? Su Huaishang asked. Huh, the same goes for you. Meng Jingshan said. When you ambushed me earlier, why did you only use 1 slash? You and I both know the answer to that question. He was not bluffing when he said that. There was a reason why Su Huaishang's earlier attack only targeted Sashimi and not Meng Jingshan, who was only 1 meter away. It was not that she did not want to do that, but she did not have the confidence to do so. It was not that difficult to ambush Sashimi, because Sashimi had absolute confidence in his detection ability. This confidence was directly proportional to his reliance. When the strongest ability that he relied on was found out, his empty confidence would turn him into a defenseless target. But Meng Jingshan was different. Even though he did not pay attention to his surroundings due to his trust in his teammates, in terms of martial artist instinct, he was much stronger than Sashimi. The sudden murderous intent was enough to trigger his reaction. If Su Huaishang attacked both of them at the same time, or if she only targeted Meng Jingshan, then her ambush might not succeed. Even though the success rate was still very high, perhaps 80 or 90%, it would not be like when she ambushed Sashimi earlier where she had a 100% chance of success. With that in mind, she would naturally choose the plan that had a 100% chance of success. After all, she had no teammates. If the ambush failed, even if she managed to heavily injure one of them, she would still be able to fight both of them at the same time. In front of 2 elites from regulation, she did not dare to underestimate them, even if it was a one-on-one fight. Furthermore, there was another person who could recover at any time. Since we are both familiar with each other's abilities. 2 seconds later, Su Huaishang replied, Then let's stop chatting. What she meant was, enough talking, it's time for us to make our move. Meng Jingshan agreed with this suggestion. If the two of them were to continue this stalemate, it would be disadvantageous for both of them, because this stalemate was more exhausting than actual combat. Even though the two of them stood there without moving during this conversation, every second they were looking for an opportunity to strike. At the same time, they had to be cautious of each other's movements. This was a great challenge to their concentration. If they were to exhaust themselves here, even if they won the battle, it would negatively affect their chances of fighting other players later. Okay. When Meng Jingshan replied, he tossed away the cigarette, but he had already put the bottle away before he took it out. Then, I won't hold back. Before he finished, he had already swung his sword. He did not count himself as a genius. It was not because he was being humble, and it was not because he wanted to pretend to be weak. Just like how Meng Jingshan described him as a genius, he was indeed unable to answer 10 questions. Even if he took the time to think, he would only be able to answer 6 or 7 questions at most. Under normal circumstances, he would only be able to answer 1 question. And that question would always be about this sword. In the blink of an eye, there was a flash of rainbow light, and the two of them disappeared. The rustling sound of the wind came slowly. This strike, the sword was faster than the sound, and the person was faster than the sword. The scary thing was, after the strike, in the night sky, there was no sound of metal clashing. The only sound that could be heard seemed to indicate that the attack had missed. But in reality, it did not miss. In that split second, the blade and the sword collided. However, one of them was cut in half by the other in a state of silence. It was like using a sharp blade to cut through a piece of tofu that was suspended in midair. Naturally, there would be no sound. Good swordsmanship. Su Huaishang stood where she was and looked forward. She said in a tired voice. She didn't lower her head to look at her 2 blades, because she knew the falling flower and flying catkins in her hands had already been broken. She also knew that there was a hideous wound under her ribs. Meng Jingshan appeared behind Su Huaishang with his back facing her. He laughed bitterly and took out a cigarette from his pocket. He put one in his mouth and said, "When it comes to swordsmanship, I don't think I will lose to anyone." He used the same hand to take out a lighter and lit the cigarette for himself. What a pity! Just as he said the word pity, the arm that was holding the sword was cut off from the shoulder. It was just like the head that slid off the sashimi. Phew! Then Meng Jingshan exhaled a puff of smoke. As he exhaled, 3 very short but very deep wounds appeared on his torso. The 3 wounds looked like he was spitting smoke. Blood spurted out from the wounds and gathered in the air. So, he turned his head and his face was still dispirited. "I hate to fight with you bunch of geniuses." After he said that, he disappeared in a flash of white light. It was not until this second that Su Huaishang relaxed slightly. She knelt on one knee and quickly used her hand to cover her wounds. She did not rush to use any item or skill to heal herself. Instead, she looked at the shadow under the roof and said coldly, "You don't have to hide anymore. I knew you were there from the beginning." Her gaze was like a torch and her tone was firm. She did not sound like someone who was heavily injured at all. "Since you are willing to cooperate with them, why don't you talk to me as well?" After he finished speaking, a man whose face was already pale with fright walked out from the shadows a moment later. "I still haven't asked for your name." "Heroine." Even someone like Fong Jin was trembling in fear when he spoke. Chapter 1352. There was an oil lamp on the table. Although it was only a small flame, it was enough to light up the small room. This cold night was destined to be sleepless. Therefore, Duan Kai had no intention of going to bed. He sat by the table, closed his eyes, and adjusted his breath. For an expert of his level, this level of rest was enough to recover the physical and mental strength he had used up during the day. "You don't have to mobilize so many people to deal with an old man like me." Suddenly, he opened his mouth and said. Before he finished his sentence, he had already opened his eyes and reached for the sword on the table. Almost at the same time as his hand touched the scabbard, there was a sudden burst of puff, 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 puff sounds around him. That was the sound of hidden weapons piercing through the paper windows and wooden planks. Not only the doors and windows, but even the walls, ceiling, and floor were penetrated by hidden weapons in the face of such an attack. It was impossible to dodge. Even if the person being attacked had a huge shield in his hand, there was no guarantee that he would come out unscathed. Moreover, Duanqi only had a sword in his hand. Fortunately, it was not an ordinary sword. This sword was called half mystic because a portion of mystic iron was mixed into the sword when it was forged. To quote from Jin Yang's description in The Return of the Condor Heroes, mystic iron is the most precious treasure in the world. It is extremely difficult to get even one tael of it. Ordinary swords, spears, swords, and halberds only need half a tael of it to become a sharp weapon. It was clear that sect leader Duan's half-mystic sword contained far more than just half a tael of mystic iron. Even though it was still far from Yang's mystic iron heavy sword, which was made entirely out of mystic iron and weighed 64 pounds, it was more than enough to deal with the current situation. Duanqi stomped on the ground with one foot and leaped up. His right wrist moved swiftly, and the light of the sword followed. Relying on the magnetic properties of the mystic iron, he used a seemingly simple spinning motion to block the hundreds of hidden weapons that were shot at him from all directions. Thud! After a breath, Duanqi landed from the air with one foot on the ground. The soft sound of his landing told the people outside the room that their target was still standing. Of course, this was not the result they wanted. Their goal today was to make Duanqi lie on the ground forever. Therefore, their attack was not over yet. Pa! Pa! Immediately after, there was a series of sounds of wooden planks breaking, and in an instant, two vigorous figures appeared. The two of them jumped out from under the floor and appeared on both sides of Duanqi, instantly forming a pincer attack. And this was within Duanqi's expectations. He knew very well that the sound of his landing would determine the direction and method of the enemy's attack. Therefore, he didn't even think before he attacked. The first slash went straight for the head of the person in front of him. That person had jumped up from downstairs and thought that he could catch Duanqi off guard. He didn't expect that he would be the one to be killed. Although the half-profound could not compare to the four great divine weapons, it was still not an ordinary item. Before the ambusher could even let out a scream, the top of his head had already been shattered by the sword, and his entire head was split into two from top to bottom. Blood splashed onto Duanqi's face, but he didn't even blink. His hand was still steady and strong. Driven by this hand, the half-profound sword turned and drew a semicircle beside him, slashing horizontally at the sneak attacker behind Duanqi. Before the tip of the sword touched that person's body, Duanqi knew that his opponent would definitely die. With his years of experience and excellent ear skills, sect leader Duan could roughly guess his opponent's figure, age, and inner chi cultivation just by listening to the sound of his opponent breaking through the floor. Therefore, he was sure that this person would definitely not be able to withstand this slash. And the truth was just as he expected. The second sneak attacker reacted to Duanqi's slash. He raised his blade to block the slash, and then his blade broke, his arm broke, and his torso broke. This was the result of the inner chi gained from practicing the virgin martial arts for more than 50 years and a well-honed sword style against a second-rate swordsman's blade style. In a place like Jianghu that didn't pay much attention to fairness, only study hard and practice hard was the fairest. Duanqi's talent wasn't very high, and he had never had any ridiculous adventures in the martial arts world, such as eating something strange after falling off a cliff and greatly increasing his inner chi, meeting a hermit master who taught him all his skills, being forced to sleep with a beautiful master for some reason, and obtaining all her skills, etc. However, he still became the sect leader of Diansong and looked down upon Jianghu with the title of Cloud Explorer. In fact, what he did was something that many people had done before. It was nothing more than practice hard. However, not everyone could add the precondition of perseverance in front of these two words. Also, not everyone could maintain this kind of hard work for 50 years, even after becoming famous and becoming the head of the sect. Screech. Just as Duanqi finished off the second sneak attacker, there was a shocking change. At that moment, a sharp steel nail suddenly protruded from the floor and pierced through the sole of Duan Kui's supporting foot. He immediately cursed in his heart. It seemed that his opponent's intelligence and viciousness were beyond his expectations. When he was hit, Duan Kui realized in hindsight that not only the previous attack of hidden weapons, but also the lives of the two sneak attackers were also a pretense. The real fatal blow was this steel nail. I advise you not to move anymore. After this attack, a rough voice sounded from outside the door. That will only make the poison spread faster. These words didn't affect Duan Kui too much. The slightly numbing pain in his foot had already told him that the steel nail was poisonous. Creak. Soon, the person who spoke pushed open the door that had been damaged by the hidden weapons. He held a lantern in his hand, and the light from the lantern illuminated the dark room. The oil lamp in the room had been extinguished by the previous attack of hidden weapons, as well as his face. It was a tall and sturdy middle-aged man, like a human-shaped iron tower. His chiseled face and body were very compatible with his voice. 2G. Duan Kai looked at the man and said coldly, I didn't know. The Wild Tiger Gang's ability to assassinate people in the dark was so outstanding. Duan Kai obviously knew the man. He was the leader of the Wild Tiger Gang, known as the Tiger-Faced Arhut, 2G. Huh? 2G sneered. That's right. It's because you're outstanding that no one knows. His words made sense. A dead man couldn't go around talking nonsense. What a pity, Duan Kai said. Compared to this way of dying, I'd rather die under the Arhut fighting tiger palm. You don't have to use this method to provoke me. 2G still had a smile on his face. I know what you're planning. I won't fall for it. He paused for a moment before continuing. Sect leader Duan, you and I both know very well that since I've chosen this method to deal with you, it means that I've already admitted that your martial arts are better than mine. I can even tell you frankly that even if I were to train for another 8 to 10 years, I still wouldn't have the confidence to defeat the current you. Hearing this, Duan Kui's heart sank. He knew that his plan to lure the man in front of him would not work. You know your own limits. Of course, if I didn't know my own limits, I would have died many times over. 2G's tone was not ashamed, but proud. Moreover, when he said this, he stood motionless at the door. He didn't even take half a step forward. It was obvious that he didn't want to give the other party any chance to fight back. Duan Kai, you're an expert and also a righteous hero. So, you have the right to be arrogant. But you also have the obligation to pay the price for this arrogance. Tonight, it's time for you to pay the price. As he spoke, the smile on 2G's face disappeared. His voice also became colder and colder. Don't worry about the Dian Song disciples you brought. They're already waiting for you on the road to hell. Duan Kai's face was ashen. Anger increased his heartbeat and pulse, and also increased the speed of the poison taking effect in his body. 2. One day, sect leader Duan still wanted to leave behind his last words. But 2G coldly interrupted him. I know. I won't die a good death. I've heard this too many times. But those who said this are all dead. I'm still alive, and I'm living a better life than them. After saying this, he slowly retreated a few steps. Until the last moment, he didn't turn his back to his opponent and didn't reveal any flaws. Brothers, send sect leader Duan on his way. Following 2G's order, another round of hidden weapons came. But this time, Duan Kai didn't even have the strength to raise his sword. At the same time, in Wang Qiong's mansion, in this darkest moment before dawn, a figure silently walked out of his room and stood in the empty courtyard. He just stood there, standing in the pitch-black darkness, and didn't say a word. A moment later, a dot of light suddenly appeared less than 10 meters away from him. In the light, there were two people, a man and a woman. The man was looking at him with a smile, while the woman was expressionlessly holding a strangely shaped lantern. Ah, mister, you're up early. Feng Bujues smiled and greeted the other party. Cheng Wei stood there, his cold eyes staring at the two people in front of him, and didn't respond. We're here to visit boss Wang Qiong. I wonder if you can go and inform him? Brother Ju said, as if nothing had happened, and also made a request without any trace of politeness. After 5 or 6 seconds of silence, Cheng-Wei finally opened his mouth. Who are you? The reason why he asked this question was not because he was really going to report these two people. Cheng-Wei just wanted to know, where did these two people come from? They had defeated all the hidden sentries around the mansion and successfully stepped into the courtyard. Chapter 1353. Knock, knock, knock. Cheng-Wei gently knocked on Wang Qiong's bedroom door. His years of experience told him that this level of knocking was enough to wake his master up. Who is it? Sure enough, not long after, Wang Qiong's half-awake voice came from the room. Manor Lord, it's me, Cheng-Wei replied. He paused for half a second before continuing. There are guests in the courtyard. Ah. Wang Qiong turned around and glanced outside the window. The sky was still pitch black. What time is it now? Manor Lord, it's the time of the 3 in the morning, Cheng-Wei replied. Normally, when people heard this, they would immediately shout something like, Are you crazy? Why are you meeting guests at 4 in the morning? However, Wang Qiong's reaction was different. He instantly woke up. Wang Qiong knew Cheng-Wei very well, and also knew how strict the security measures were to protect him. Hence, when he heard the answer, the time of the 3 in the morning, Cheng-Wei's emphasis on the words in the courtyard seemed a little serious. In the entire martial arts world, the number of people who could come to Wang Qiong's courtyard at this time could be counted on one hand. What was even stranger was that Cheng-Wei, as one of the guards, actually helped the other party to inform him. What was going on? Wang Qiong muttered. He thought about many things in that short moment. Then he opened his mouth and said, Let them in. This. Cheng-Wei hesitated for a moment. Directly into your room? When he asked this, Wang Qiong had already moved the Kong table beside the bed to the bed and lit the oil lamp on the table with a match. Ah, yes, you can come in too, Wang Qiong replied as he flung the fire booklet away. Seeing that the room was already lit, Cheng-Wei didn't say anything else. After replying with an yes, he turned around and led the two guests to the front of the room. Not long after, Cheng-Wei pushed the door open and entered. Behind him, there was a man and a woman. Manor Lord. After Cheng-Wei entered the room, he respectfully said to Wang Qiong, I've brought the guests. These two are. Wang Qiong looked at his brother Ju and Ruoyu as he asked. Sure. Feng Bujue took advantage of the opportunity to cut in and saluted Wang Qiong absent-mindedly. This humble one is the head of Broken Sword Chihitsu, Feng Bujue. He then raised his hand towards Ruoyu. This is my junior apprentice sister, Li Ruoyu. He didn't give Ruoyu the title of Madam this time. Not because he didn't want to, but because Ruoyu had told him in advance not to take advantage of this kind of slightly childish. Broken Sword Chihitsu. Wang Qiong's reaction after hearing these 4 words was beyond Brother Ju's expectations. Broken Sword Chihitsu. Broken Sword Chihitsu. He muttered these 4 words repeatedly in a low voice. He seemed to be deep in thought. After a full minute, he looked at Brother Ju and said, Are you really Feng Bujue from Broken Sword Chihitsu? At this moment, Brother Ju acutely sensed something. He smiled and said, Oh, I didn't expect Boss Wang to have heard of my name. Wang Qiong ignored his probing and continued to ask, Can you prove it? What kind of proof do you want? Feng Bujue spread his hands and said, It doesn't matter. Do as you see fit. Wang Qiong's answer was flawless. Ha! Good. You're not bad. Feng Bujue smiled. He looked at Wang Qiong with a meaningful gaze. After he finished speaking, Brother Ju lifted his leg and took a step forward. His movements were very ordinary. It was as if he was walking up a flight of stairs. However, there were no stairs in front of him. However, he still went up. Using void tread, which allowed him to stand in midair, Brother Ju floated 1 step above the ground. Ruoyu was not surprised by this. However, Cheng-Wei's expression was very interesting. Steward Cheng's martial arts skills weren't low, and he had seen many miraculous lightness skills. However, he couldn't understand the ability to stand in the air without any preparation. It seems like it might be Feng Bujue. When Wang Qiong saw this, he seemed to be quite calm. It was as if he was watching a show. It's just a possibility and not a certainty, Feng Bujue asked. I have to ask you a few more questions before I can be sure, Wang Qiong said. Ask away. Brother Zhu replied straightforwardly. May I ask, Master Feng, how old are you? Wang Qiong asked. I don't know. Feng Bujue almost blurted out in a matter-of-fact manner. You don't know? Wang Qiong repeated the 3 words in a questioning tone. During the sword duel in Changlin, I looked like this. During the duel at the Forbidden City, I looked like this too. Later, when I went sightseeing in Buried Heart Valley, I still looked like this. Feng Bujue was quick-witted. He knew that age was not the main point that Wang Qiong wanted to test him. The main point was this information. If you want to know how old I am, I can only tell you. I've lived for too long. I can't remember. Wang Qiong nodded. That makes sense. He paused. However, I can't completely confirm your identity. Oh, Feng Bujue asked curiously. Is that not enough? Not enough, Wang Qiong replied. You could be Feng Bujue himself, but there's also a possibility that you are just someone who's good at Qigong, and like me, you have read the Forbidden Martial Record. The Forbidden Martial Record that he mentioned was a top-secret book. It was one of the 3 Forbidden Scrolls. According to rumors, these 3 scrolls were hidden deep within the palace, and only the current emperor had the right to read them. Other people, if they dared to open the seal, they would be punished by having their whole family executed. Since the secrets recorded in the other 2 scrolls had nothing to do with this book, I won't mention them here. I will only talk about the Forbidden Martial Record here. This book was written during the last years of the Ming Dynasty. That year, Yuan Shi, the leader of the Wulin Alliance, who was regarded as a legend, passed away due to illness. In order to fight for the supreme martial arts skills he left behind and the position of the leader, a cataclysmic battle broke out in the Wulin Alliance. And the result of this battle was that the strength of the martial arts world was greatly damaged, and the imperial court saw an opportunity to intervene. They took advantage of the situation and wiped out all the forces of power. Traditional powerful sects like Shaolin and Wudong had already been destroyed at that time. Among the old sects, only the Beggar clan still had a little bit of incense left. The few remaining sects could only survive if they accepted the imperial edict to be incorporated into the imperial court. It was that year that the Wulin Alliance of this world became a thing of the past. The nature of the martial prohibition secret record was like an epitaph written for the Jianghu. Most of the information in this book was provided by the spies of the imperial court who had infiltrated the various sects and clans. There were many anecdotes and secrets that were unknown to the public. Broken Sword Chahitsu and Feng Bujue were naturally mentioned in the book. Of course, as a book written from the standpoint of the imperial court, they didn't pay much attention to the sword duel in Songlin and Buried Heart Valley. Their focus was on Brother Zhu's fight with a beautiful woman in the Forbidden City. Back to the main topic. Wang Qiong had obviously read that book before. As for why and how he read it, that was not important. Because he was Wang Qiong, he had his own way. In a way, this explained why the emperor wanted to kill him, the merchant. This is the first time I've heard of this book. Several seconds later, Feng Bujue spoke again. But I can roughly guess what is written in it. He shrugged. In any case, that is not important. I still have many ways to prove my identity. As he spoke, Brother Zhu raised one hand and pressed 2 fingers together. A black, glowing card appeared at the tip of his finger. This is not considered Qigong, right? Feng Bujue asked. Wang Qiong stared at the card for several seconds. What is the use of it? There are many uses, Brother Zhu replied calmly. The simplest and most direct use is to throw out. So what if you throw out? Wang Qiong asked. It can hurt people, Feng Bujue said. How bad can it be? Wang Qiong asked. At the very least, it can cripple your friend on the beam. Feng Bujue replied with a smile on his face. But Wang Qiong's expression changed. He thought for a few seconds and finally came to a conclusion. Looks like you really are Feng Bujue. Boss Wang did not need Brother Zhu to prove himself. When he noticed the existence of the man on the beam, everything was clear. The man hiding on the beam was called Cheng Yong. He was Cheng Wei's younger brother. As mentioned before, Wang Xiong had two bodyguards. One was Cheng Wei, who was also the butler, and the other was Cheng Yong. Compared to his brother, Cheng Yong was far behind in terms of scheming and etiquette. But there was one thing that Cheng Yong was better than Cheng Wei: martial arts talent. Cheng Yong's martial arts were very high, so high that even Wang Xiong felt reassured. No one knew what kind of martial arts he practiced, and no one knew how good he was. They only knew that once Cheng Yong made a move, his opponent would die. In fact, he did not have many chances to make a move. The few times he did, his opponents were all top-notch fighters from the martial arts world or the imperial court. Only those top-notch fighters had the ability and opportunity to stand in front of Wang Xiong. However, none of these people could last more than 5 moves against Cheng Yong. If Cheng Wei was Wang Xiong's right-hand man, then Cheng Yong was Wang Xiong's shadow. There was nothing more reliable than a shadow, because he was always by his master's side. There were even a few times when Wang Xiong was attacked in bed, but Cheng Yong saved him. Seeing this, everyone should understand why Wang Xiong dared to talk to so many martial arts experts at such a close distance without being afraid of being ambushed. Then, Wang Xiong paused for half a second, then asked, "Master Feng of the legends, why are you looking for me in the middle of the night?" "Boss Wang, you're a businessman," Feng Bujue said. "I'm looking for you to talk about business." As he spoke, he walked forward and sat on the edge of the Kong bed. "As for why I chose to come at this time, I have no choice," he explained slowly. "During the day, there were some situations in the town, so it was inconvenient for me to enter the town. Fortunately, more than 2 hours ago, that inconvenience no longer existed. Then, from more than 2 hours ago until now." Wang Xiong did not care much about his brother Buja sitting on the Kong bed, so he continued the conversation calmly. "What did you and your junior sister do this time?" "Ha!" Feng Bujua laughed. "We went to find someone and asked him some questions. Then we chopped his head off and brought it to you." After he finished speaking, he seemed to remember something and added, "Oh, of course, before we entered your courtyard, we made the guard around your house unconscious. After we came in, we chatted with Butler Chung for a while." "Oh," Wang Xiao nodded. "Right, I haven't asked yet." He suddenly looked at Cheng Wei. "Old Chung, what's going on today? Why did you obediently help them pass on the message?" Cheng Wei did not answer the question. The person who responded to Wang Xiong was Ruo Yu. "Because he lost," she said in an icy tone. "Did he fight with you?" Wang Xiong asked. "No," Ruo Yu replied. "Then how did he lose?" Wang Xiong asked again. Before he finished speaking, Ruo Yu had already raised her right hand and held the hilt of her sword. At that moment, her gaze shifted, and a fierce, murderous aura instantly filled the entire room. The murderous aura was like a pair of invisible hands that tightly gripped the throats of everyone in the room. Even Brother Bujue felt the suffocating pressure. Chi! In the blink of an eye, just as Ruo Yu's murderous aura rose, she saw a black shadow dash down from the beam. That shadow was as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Ruo Yu, his hands already holding his weapon. Then his movement stopped. It was not a slight pause, but a complete freeze. A bean-sized drop of cold sweat dripped from Cheng Yong's forehead to the bridge of his nose and split in two. He stood there, his eyes wide open as he stared at the female swordsman in front of him. She looked to be in her early 20s, and her otherworldly temperament and beauty were unforgettable. But at this moment, these visible appearances were covered up by the heavy sword intent and became negligible. Ruo Yu's hand did not move, and her sword was still in its scabbard. But from Cheng Yong's point of view, the tip of her sword was already pressed against his throat. He did not move because he could not move. His hands, his feet, his torso, even his fingers and eyelids, none of them could move. If he moved, he would be beheaded. This was what Cheng Yong felt at this moment. The silence lasted for about 10 seconds. 10 seconds later, Cheng Yong's body loosened, and his whole body fell to the ground like a collapsing building block, gasping for breath. Cold sweat covered his horrified face. At this moment, Ruo Yu, who had retracted her murderous aura and sword intent, walked steadily to the Kong bed. She nonchalantly took out a human head that was still bleeding and wrapped in cloth from her bag. She then casually placed it on the table. When she put down the head, Ruo Yu continued her unfinished words. That's how I lost. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.